Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 351. 9 years to regain strength. Then, Makoto Senju returned to the flower shop without any hurry, and continued to arrange flowers leisurely for the flower shop owner. After carefully completing a work and placing it on the shelf, he looked at the sky and asked Synopsis to clean up and close the shop. Makoto Senju, on the other hand, carried that gift from Raijin Ishida and went up to the second floor where he usually lived. The gift was opened, and inside were 2 brand new books that had been copied. One of them was a record of the many fighting skills of the Ishida family, which had a long history among the Quincy clan. Makoto Senju flicked through the content and put it aside. In fact, after the guidance of Kurosaki Masaki during this period of time, Makoto Senju had a thorough understanding of that Quincy's fighting mode and fighting style. In a sense, with the understanding of the essence, Makoto Senju could completely develop a large number of high-end skills that ordinary Quincy could hardly imagine at any time based on spiritual control. Therefore, this book was of little significance to Makoto Senju, and it was just a reference. The other book is a secret record of the history of many Quincy's in the Ishida family, and the first one is the record of the king of Quincy's Ithwatch. It is said that when he was born, he could not see, hear, speak, or even move. He has the ability to divide the soul. Those who drink Ithwatch's blood wine will have their souls engraved with words with abilities, and have corresponding abilities. He was defeated by the God 13 led by Minamoto Shichikuni 1,000 years ago, and left a prophecy. The sealed king of Quincy's, it will take 900 years to regain your heartbeat, 90 years to regain your consciousness, and 9 years to regain your power, 9 days to seize the world. It was not until Senju Makoto read all the information about Ithwatch that he understood why Ishida Raijin was so cautious. Especially about the prophecy, he was very careful to avoid leaking it to the defecting Shinigami including Kurosaki Ishin and Uehara Kisuke. Shinigami and Quincy are originally in opposition. About 200 years ago, the 13th Division of the Gotti took the initiative to launch a war of extermination against the Quincy group. In that war, most of the Quincy in the real world were wiped out, and the remaining ones mostly survived incognito. Even a prominent and powerful Quincy family like the Ishida family needs to be monitored by the Seireitei at all times on the grounds of avoiding the imbalance of souls. Once the Seireitei knows about the prophecy of Ithwatch, I'm afraid that the Seireitei will first suspect that Ithwatch is hidden by the small number of remaining Quincy in the real world. In addition, in order to prevent Ithwatch from leading a large number of Quincy to attack Soul Society again, the Seireitei will inevitably further slaughter and exterminate all Quincy. Among them, the information given by Ishida Raijin about the record of holy separation is also quite clear, that is, Ithwatch recovers all the power of the mixed blood Quincy at one time, in other words, recover the power in 9 years. The rumored king of Quincy has begun to regain his power. This made Senju Makoto excited. When a serious person fights, how can he just sit there and watch the opponent's big move and remain indifferent? Regaining power in 9 years, in other words, Ithwatch is a weakling among weaklings at this time. If Ithwatch can be caught, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wants? However, Senju Makoto quickly dismissed this idea. After all, this prophecy was originally left by Ithwatch, although it may be a pie that Ithwatch drew for some powerful Quincy in order to avoid the team being difficult to lead after his defeat 1,000 years ago. However, Ithwatch must have some backup plans, and it is impossible for him to completely become a weakling that can be manipulated by anyone. More importantly, Senju Makoto doesn't know the specific location of Ithwatch's hiding. But, Ithwatch? That guy might be good for me. Senju Makoto closed the book in his hand, walked to the window and looked at Kurakura town in the night. While thinking silently, he lowered his eyes and looked at the black cat that appeared at some point with some joy. Isn't this the black cat that came today? What's wrong? Did manager Uehara leave you behind? How pitiful, Senju Makoto said as he opened the window and wanted to pick up Kuronko Yorishi without saying anything. Seeing this, Kuronko Yorishi, who seemed to be aloof on the outside, glanced at Senju Makoto with contempt, moved his feet, and was about to change his position to monitor this Quincy. Suddenly, Kuronko Yorishi felt as if the spirit particles around him had solidified, temporarily restricting Kuronko Yorishi's movements. This momentary pause also made Kuronko Yorishi fall completely into Senju Makoto's hands. Meow. Kuronko Yoichi struggled subconsciously, but found that Senju Makoto's hands seemed to have clamped all the joints perfectly and skillfully, making Kuronko Yoichi unable to struggle out. Senju Makoto directly rubbed his face against Kuronko Yoichi's body, greedily, and for the first time in a long time, he began to suck the cat. Miaulu. Kuronko Yoichi was still struggling at first, but facing Senju Makoto, an old cat sucker, Kuronko Yoichi soon felt his whole body completely softened, and he had no ability to resist at all. Damn, why does this feel so familiar? A certain thought flashed through Kuronko Yoichi's mind, and he felt that his consciousness seemed to have been completely sucked away. Senju Makoto raised his head with satisfaction, and found that Kuronko Yoichi in his hand had been sucked almost into a pool of mud. His pupils were dilated, and his pink tongue was hanging out weakly. How cute. How can such a cute cat run around at night? If it encounters a pervert, it will be very dangerous. As Senju Makoto said this, he hugged Kuronko Yoichi in his arms, and then slowly closed the only window in the room leading to the outside world. In an instant, Kuronko Yoichi realized that something was wrong. He might have encountered a pervert. Immediately, Kuronko Yoichi tried to struggle and resist, but he felt that his honest cat body seemed to still be in the after effects of being sucked and could not get out. The soft body could not muster any strength at all, and the originally sharp and angry cat cry was more like a coquettish act. Meow. Are you hungry? Come, I happen to have some fresh milk that was just produced today, which is guaranteed to feed you, Senju Makoto said with a smile, then pinched the neck meat of fate and directly carried Kuronko Yoichi into the depths of the room. Chapter 352. Pervert. The basement laboratory of Uehara's grocery store. Uehara Kisuke was busy studying and analyzing the flesh sample that Kuronko Yoichi had taken from Senju Makoto on the pretext of something, trying to get some information from it. Kurosaki Makoto. Human, Quincy. Although Kurosaki Makoto had no flaws in terms of form or spiritual pressure, but Uehara Kisuke's intuition still felt that the guy was suspicious. His gentle style made Uehara Kisuke think of a friend who had died for decades. However, compared to that friend, Kurosaki Makoto's style of doing things was undoubtedly a little more casual and wanton. For the sake of caution and to verify some speculations, Uehara Kisuke deliberately used Kuronko Yoichi to reasonably take a flesh sample from Senju Makoto. The flesh activity is completely different from the artificial body, so it is ruled out that it is an artificial body. After a long time, Uehara Kisuke came to a result that was both expected and completely inconsistent with the speculation. Then, Uehara Kisuke looked at the time, scratched his hair, and murmured in confusion. Yoichi went to monitor the way Kurosaki Makoto treated his facial wounds. Why hasn't she returned for so long? However, Uehara Kisuke carefully sensed it and found that Kuronko Yoichi's unique spiritual pressure reaction was still extremely stable, so he didn't think much about it and turned to compare Senju Makoto's body sample with the characteristics of the Quincy. Near Ululu on the other side, facing the basin of hot milk placed in front of Senju Makoto, Kuronko Yoichi refused to lower his head to taste it. As one of the four nobles of Soul Society, the former captain of the 2nd Division, Shunchain Shifen Yuan Yoichi, although he maintained the form of a black cat, there is no doubt that Shifen Yuan Yoichi also has his own dignity and integrity. How could he drink the milk of a strange Quincy? What's more, Kuronko Yoichi has already determined that the Kurosaki Makoto in front of him is definitely a pervert. What if he put something incredible in the milk? Don't you like milk? Makoto Senju said gently after tying Kuronko Yoichi tightly and making the final knot. Don't worry, I'm a good person. I tied you up like this because I'm afraid you'd run away and get caught by some pervert and put in a cage. Kuronko Yoichi, who was almost tied up like a meatball, still glanced at Makoto Senju proudly, thinking viciously. I'd rather be put in a cage by someone else than be tied up by a pervert like you, that is. I don't want to expose my true form in front of strangers. Wait, I'll kill you sooner or later, you bastard pervert. Makoto Senju didn't seem to notice Kuronko Yoichi's look. He stroked Kuronko Yoichi unconsciously with one hand and rubbed his chin with the other, muttering as if thinking about something. If you don't eat anything for a whole night, it will go bad, right? But there's nothing suitable for cats at home except hot milk. Oh, it's really annoying. When he said this, Senju Makoto seemed to nod his head unconsciously, and then said as if he had suddenly realized something. I thought about it. Cats and dogs are similar. In this case, just when Kuronko Yoichi thought it was dog food or something, he suddenly found that this pervert was carrying him towards the toilet. No way. Kuronko Yorishi immediately had a crazy and outrageous guess in his mind, and his pupils suddenly contracted as if he saw a complete perverted demon. There is definitely something wrong with Uehara Kisuke's guess. How could such a perverted idea be related to the gentle Senju Makotao? And until Senju Makotao was about to lift the toilet lid, Kuronko Yorishi, who was afraid that Senju Makotao would press him down the next moment, could no longer hold back and spoke. "Stop it, human." Makotao Senju subconsciously threw Kuronko Yorishi onto the toilet lid, and said to Churuji in shock as he looked at Kuronko Yorishi in his hand. You can talk? What's so strange about that?" Kuronko Yorishi tried to maintain a cold tone and said. "Let me go, human." "Wait." Makotao Senju seemed to react belatedly. His expression became serious, and he condensed a spirit bow in his hand and took a defensive posture, saying in a serious tone, "Since you can talk, then what does it mean that you scratched me this morning and appeared outside my window?" "Surveillance." Kuronko Yorishi was a little speechless for a moment, but in a flash, the desperate Kuronko Yorishi said with disdain in his eyes. "So what?" Makotao Senju said in a serious tone. "If that's the case, it seems that sending you back to Uehara's door needs to be delayed for the time being. Uehara Kisuke must give me a reasonable explanation first." Kuronko Yorishi heard this and said disdainfully, "With you just training with Kurosaki Masaki for such a long time, do you really think you can trap me?" The next moment, Kuronko Yorishi's spiritual pressure suddenly increased, and he was about to break through the seemingly messy rope tied to his body, and then teach this little queency a lesson. The rope seemed to be stimulated by Kuronko Yorishi's spiritual pressure, and instantly burst out with a little blue light, and invisibly formed a kind of formation for queency, which completely suppressed Kuronko Yorishi's spiritual pressure. "What?" Kuronko Yorishi's pupils revealed a bit of shock, and said, "You actually set up a formation on me in advance?" Senju Makotao said. "Just in case, the function of this formation is to suppress the spiritual pressure of the enemy in the center, and it has no killing effect. Don't worry, I have always been very caring to cats. Don't worry." This tone that seemed to be really talking to a little pet undoubtedly stimulated Kuronko Yorishi. Perhaps, Kuronko Yorishi usually likes to pretend to be an ordinary black cat to play tricks on people or show weakness, but after revealing his identity to a certain extent, Kuronko Yorishi obviously cannot accept the fact that he is controlled by a small queency. Immediately, Kuronko Yorishi's eyes condensed, and the spiritual pressure that burst out increased again. However, it was useless. On the contrary, the rope tied to Kuronko Yorishi's body became tighter, tightly restricting all the actions of Kuronko Yorishi, who was thrown on the toilet lid. For a moment, as if sensing the smile in Senju Makotao's eyes, Kuronko Yorishi felt that a string called reason was broken. The spiritual pressure in the black cat form is not enough, then use the real body. The next moment, under Senju Makotao's gaze, Kuronko Yorishi's posture began to change rapidly. Chapter 353 True Love Can Transcend Race. The original outline of the black cat Yorishi quickly grew larger. This scene was completely beyond Makotao Senju's expectations. In Makotao Senju's expectation, Yorishi Shifen Yuan might choose to reveal her identity, or continue to show weakness, but he did not expect that Yorishi Shifen Yuan, who maintained the appearance of a black cat, would choose to restore her body. "Yorishi, have you forgotten what kind of environment you're in?" In Makotao Senju's slightly confused eyes, a black-skinned lady with a body line that can be called perfect suddenly appeared in the narrow toilet. Although after several accidents in the past, Makotao Senju was quite familiar with Yorishi Shifen Yuan's body. But after Yorishi Shifen Yuan in front of him restored his body, the rope tied to his body was not broken, but deeply entangled in all parts of Yorishi Shifen Yuan's slender but fleshy body, leaving traces. It looked as if Yorishi Shifen Yuan was caught by some pervert with some perverted binding method. In fact, Shifen Yuan Yorishi can be regarded as half of Senju Makotao's teacher, treating his mentor like this. Thinking of this, Senju Makotao felt ashamed and felt his nose heat up. He subconsciously raised his hand to cover half of his face. Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who seemed to have some special exhibitionism, didn't care about those details. His cat-like golden eyes condensed. Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who was tied up and sat on the toilet lid, felt a surge of spiritual pressure. He even used the instant coaxing technique to try to break free from the restraints in one fell swoop, and then teach the perverted queency bastard in front of him a lesson he would never forget. "Open." The spiritual pressure that seemed to be substantial suddenly rose. However, before Shifu Yorishi's face showed a look of joy, the blue light that was originally just dots on the road seemed to be stimulated by something, and in an instant it became one, which once again completely suppressed Shifu Yorishi's spiritual pressure. Shifu Yorishi. How is it possible? What kind of queency formation is this? The resentment on Shifu Yorishi's face turned into astonishment in the blink of an eye. That, as a pure gentleman, Senju Cheng coughed lightly and turned his body slightly to show his morality. However, in order to guard against Shifu Yorishi's surprise attack and backup plan, and to respect Shifu Yorishi's charm, Senju Cheng, who turned sideways, still stared at Shifu Yorishi's every move. Then, click. Under Shifu Yorishi's stiff eyes, Senju Cheng picked up the camera with one hand and pressed the shutter several times at Shifu Yorishi. Shifu Yorishi. You perverted bastard! Shifu Yorishi shouted angrily. Although Shifu Yorishi has a certain exhibitionism fetish, as a member of the Shifu family, he cannot allow such things to spread in the Soul Society, otherwise it will undoubtedly cause a huge blow to the reputation of the Shifu family. As Yorishi Shifun's towering chest kept rising and falling, she felt that she was careless this time and said thoughtfully, "Tell me. What do you want?" Hearing Yorishi Shifun's tone, Makoto Senju immediately understood that Yorishi Shifun must have misunderstood that she was going to threaten her with these photos. But as a pure and honest gentleman, how could Makoto Senju do such a dirty thing? Taking pictures was simply to record Yorishi Shifun's rare black history of being humiliated. And she didn't have any hand on Yorishi Shifun. If Makoto Senju revealed her true identity, wouldn't she be teased by Yorishi Shifun? As for private collections, regular viewings and so on, Makoto Senju naturally didn't have such ideas. Then, Makoto Senju coughed a few times and spoke in a gentle but serious tone. "Don't talk like a victim. I was the one being watched, but you are the one approaching me with other goals. And I didn't take off your clothes. All my actions were just to protect myself and confirm your goal." After hearing this, Shifu Yorishi was a little speechless. Thinking about it carefully, Shifu Yorishi also understood that the main reason why he was so defeated was that he underestimated the queency who called himself Kurosaki Makoto. At the time, when Kurosaki Makoto tied the ropes to the black cat shape, Shifu Yorishi had never expected that such a high-level queency formation was arranged on it. It's just, Shifu Yorishi, who was tied tightly and sat on the toilet lid, always felt that he had to apologize to Senju Makoto. Isn't this too outrageous? After a while, seeing that Senju Makoto seemed to raise the camera again, Shifu Yorishi explained with gritted teeth. "My purpose of surveillance is only to confirm the authenticity of your identity. I have no ill intentions. So, who are you? Background, name, ability, hobbies, height and weight." Makoto Senju stopped talking in time, and found that Shifu Yorishi, who always liked to tease him and Kachikabyukaya in various ways, had a look of real shame and anger. After thinking about it, Makoto Senju took off his coat and covered Shifu Yorishi, and then leaned against the wall farthest from Shifu Yorishi in the toilet. This action that showed his attitude also eased Shifu Yorishi's expression a lot. Then, Makoto Senju spoke. "Change back to the appearance of a black cat, so that it seems to be easier for us to communicate." Shifu Yorishi heard the words and hesitated for a moment. The originally charming figure slowly shrank again and turned into a black cat, but what made Shifu Yorishi grit his teeth was that the ropes seemed to have a certain stretching and contraction function, and were still tied tightly to her body. Then, Makoto Senju stepped forward and hugged Kuronko Yorishi with his coat, stroking Shifu Yorishi's back with one hand, and said, "Now that you have calmed down, we need to have a good talk." Kuronko Yorishi, who seemed to have accepted his fate, glanced at Makoto Senju and said, "Sure enough, you were a pervert." Huh. Makoto Senju was confused. He didn't do anything except taking pictures. Is this still a pervert? Kuronko Yorishi continued. "You're indifferent to my true form, but you can't help but touch the black cat appearance. You're indeed a queency with a perverted hobby." Makoto Senju's mouth twitched obscurely, then he raised Kuronko Yorishi with both hands and placed it in front of his eyes, revealing a hint of an ambiguous smile, and said, "There is no way. Who said that true love can transcend race?" After that, in Kuronko Yorishi's horrified eyes, Makoto Senju actually buried his head again and started to pet the cat. "Meow Lulu. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 354. What a broad mind. After a while, Kuroko Yorishi lay on the cushion that Senju Makotao had prepared for her. Her body was still tightly tied, but her dilated pupils and her soft pink tongue stretched out weakly seemed to have experienced unimaginable humiliation. At this moment, Yorishi's weak moral integrity in this form also inexplicably produced an illusion that she was not clean. I was really Sutnam. As for Senju Makotao, he seemed to be sitting opposite Kuroko Yorishi with pleasure and satisfaction, sipping tea carefully. His eyes were closed and he slowly felt it, as if he was still tasting the aftertaste of sucking cats. After a while, Senju Makotao pushed a basin of hot milk in front of Kuroko Yorishi again and asked, pretending to be ignorant. So, what are you? The god of death? Or some strange thing like a cat demon? Kuroko Yorishi glanced at the hot milk in front of him, but this time he sipped a few sips obediently, and then said, the god of death. Senju Makotao stroked his chin and asked curiously, so, are you familiar with the legendary Seireitei and the Gotti 13? Kuroko Yorishi paused while slurping his milk and asked, oh? Are you interested? Of course, whether it is as an imaginary enemy with a conflicting position or simply to prevent it, how could I ignore the group of Shinigami? Senju Makotao answered with a faint tone of fear, without revealing the slightest flaw. Kuroko Yorishi glanced at Senju Makotao, and then as a prisoner in a sense, he described the current situation of Seireitei. In addition to Senju Makotao's intentional and unintentional indirect hints, Senju Makotao soon had a specific understanding of that current situation of the Gotti 13. Since the Expeditionary Corps War, the captain level of the Gotti 13 has not changed much. In addition to the new generation of Shinigami such as Hisaji Shuei, Matsumoto Rangiku, Abarai Rinji, Kira Ijiru, Hinamori Mamo, etc., who have served as vice-captains. Only the position of captain of the 10th Division was changed from Shiba Ishin to the talented boy Hitsuge Ichiro, who possessed the strongest zanpakutō of the Ice and Snow type. What surprised Makotao Senju was that his influence on Soul Society and Hyuko Mundo did not interfere with certain world lines, so that the former vice-captain of the 13th Division, Shiba Kayam, and his wife were both killed by the attack of the Hollows. So far, the Shiba family, which was originally one of the 4 great nobles, has inexplicably fallen, and the only 2 remaining members of the clan in Soul Society have been expelled to Rukongei. By the way, speaking of the vacancies in the 13th Division of the Gotti, in addition to the 13th Division, the position of vice-captain of the 4th Division has been vacant for decades, and the 4th Division is responsible for treatment. After a pause, Kuroko Yorishi said intentionally or unintentionally while licking his paw with his tongue. Therefore, if you attack the Seireitei someday, you can consider giving priority to attacking the weakest Division 4. Makotao Senju raised his eyebrows obscurely, as if he had no doubt at all. Thank you for your suggestion, but I don't have that kind of boring interest. After a pause, Makotao Senju spoke. On the contrary, I'm more inclined to make friends with the Seireitei. Make friends? Kuroko Yorishi looked at Makotao Senju in surprise, with obvious surprise in his pupils. The contradiction between the Queency and the Shinigami is not only in terms of position, but also the hatred accumulated by the war that has lasted for thousands of years is countless. Therefore, even if Ishida Raijin is familiar with Urahara Kisuken Kuroseki Ishin, Kuroko Yorishi also clearly understands that Ishida Raijin has never really trusted them. More importantly, the reason why Ishida Raijin does not show hostility to Urahara Kisuken Kuroseki Ishin is limited to their kindness to Kuroseki Masaki. And the Queency in front of him actually said something about making friends with the Seireitei. The hatred between Queency and Shinigami has lasted for who knows how many generations. Can you let it go? Kuroko Yorishi asked suspiciously. What if you can let it go? What if you can't let it go? Senju Makotao sighed and said. I have been searching in the human world for so many years, and it is rare to find people of the same clan. I don't want to see that one day I will lose the last of my clan because of those hatreds. Especially after the strange incident called Holy Separation, I'm afraid that the only Queency left in the world are the few in Karakura town, right? In this case, what's hatred can't be let go. At the end of the speech, Senju Makotao's tone seemed to reveal a relaxed look. Of course, the most important thing is that Senju Makotao is not a Queency in the first place. It is natural that it is relaxed and real for her to declare that she wants to let go of hatred. However, Senju Cheng's gentle and relieved words made Shifu Yuan Yorishi more moved. What kind of mind and realm does it take to be able to accept all this so calmly and be willing to take the initiative to try to reconcile with the Seireitei? Indeed, although the queency was the victim, it was undoubtedly magnanimous to take the initiative to forgive the Seireitei. Kuronko Yorishi thought for a while and asked, "How do you plan to make friends?" Senju Cheng seemed to hesitate and ponder for a long time before slowly speaking. "The power of the God 13 is generally concentrated in the hands of the captains, right? If we can win the support of some peace-loving captains, it will surely slightly affect the Seireitei's position on the queency." "Indeed, that's true," Kuronko Yorishi said affirmatively. "Then among the GOTY 13, I wonder which captains are necessary to try to make friends?" Senju Cheng asked with concern. Kuronko Yorishi thought for a while and answered seriously. "Captain Unohana Retsu, Captain Komamura Sejin and Captain Yukita Joshua can all be considered." Senju Cheng nodded and asked, "Then I wonder if you have any channels to contact them?" Kuronko Yorishi stared at Senju Cheng for a few breaths, then said, "Okay, but you have to let me go and hand over the photo." Senju Cheng shook his head and refused. "Of course I will let you go, but the photo must be kept in my hands, but I can promise that I will never keep the photo for anyone else." After a pause, Senju Cheng said sincerely, "Please believe me, I definitely don't want to threaten you with the photo, nor do I try to use the photo to do something out of line. It's just that the Queency group needs the friendship of the Seireitei too much now, and you're the only channel I can contact." Kuronko Yorishi flicked his little claws and decided to give this perverted Queency a little trust. And after getting away, Kuronko Yorishi was confident that if this perverted Queency dared to break his promise, he would have countless ways to kill him if he was not careful. Chapter 355 Flower Language Letter. The next morning, when Uehara Kisuke, who was immersed in research, came back to his senses, the sun had slowly risen in the sky. Then, Uehara Kisuke, who came out of the underground laboratory, happened to meet Kuronko Yorishi, who seemed to have just returned not long ago, and Kuronko Yorishi also looked tired. Uehara Kisuke waved his hand at Kuronko Yorishi and asked, "Yorishi, why are you back so late?" Kuronko Yorishi recalled the experience of last night, and couldn't help but rolled his eyes at Uehara Kisuke, and said unhappily, "What does it have to do with you?" Suddenly, Uehara Kisuke, who felt that he had been inexplicably defeated in the early morning, scratched his head, and asked without understanding why Kuronko Yorishi was in a bad mood. "What about the situation of Kurosaki Makatao?" Kuronko Yorishi hesitated for a moment and said in a somewhat weird tone, "Queency, a hateful Queency." Uehara Kisuke heard this and smacked his lips and said, "So, am I overthinking it? I have verified it in different ways, but I can't find any problems with the sample." Kuronko Yorishi heard this, and the anger that had been suppressed in his heart for most of the night seemed to burst out all of a sudden, and he kept saying, "So, you are suspicious all day long, can you do something serious? Huh? You asked me to monitor a Queency for no reason. Do you know that I—" When he said this, Kuronko Yoichi's voice suddenly paused. Uehara Kisuke took a look at Kuronko Yoichi, who was intact, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" However, Kuronko Yoichi naturally couldn't tell Uehara Kisuke about his embarrassing experience, so he said instead, "I was bitten by mosquitoes all night, and finally I couldn't stand it and found an excuse to sneak into the house. I felt much better after drinking some hot milk." Hearing some trivial complaints, Uehara Kisuke immediately lost most of his interest and answered perfunctorily, "Oh, I'm glad you're alright." Kuronko Yoichi stared at Uehara Kisuke with an unfriendly look, and then said, "In addition, I had a brief exchange with Kurosaki Makatao. As a Queency, this guy is quite interesting. He is willing to put aside his hatred and make friends with the Seireitei." Then, Kuronko Yoichi pointed to some small objects placed in the corner and said, "Those are the letters and gifts that Kurosaki Makatao intends to try to make friends with the captains. You can take them with you when you go to the Seireitei to purchase goods." In an instant, Uehara Kisuke's interest was completely aroused. He completely forgot Kuronko Yoichi and squatted in front of the pile of small objects to check them one by one, and even opened the letters privately to browse. However, what disappointed Uehara Kisuke was that there was nothing special in the content of the letters, and the gifts were just some worldly items that met the interests and hobbies of the corresponding captains. This scene also made Kuronko Yorishi stare at Urehara Kisuke's back and his teeth itch. Asshole, you are not as good as that pervert Kurosaki Makoto, who used you and then ignored you. Humph. Then, Kuronko Yorishi disappeared in a flash, leaving Urehara Kisuke, who seemed to be trying to decipher something from the letter. As the Urehara General Store, which connects the real world and the Soul Society, although Urehara Kisuke is a wanted person, he can still enter and exit the Soul Society at will to purchase goods with the help of the Shibuin family. After all, for many instruments or materials, only the Seireitei can meet Urehara Kisuke's research needs. As for the letters and gifts that Urehara Kisuke brought over, they were also delivered to the captains of the 4th, 7th, and 13th Divisions through the Shibuin family. Letters and gifts from Queen C. With the idea of peace and justice. It's commendable. Komamura Sejin. Queen C. That's rare, Yukita Joshiro. As the gentle or righteous representatives among the captain-level Shinigami, Komamura Sejin and Yukita Joshiro did not despise this friendship that they did not know how to convey, but they also gave recognition and friendly replies to the letters. As for the gift sent to Unohana Retsu, in addition to the letter, the gift was a flower arrangement. The content of the letter was generally similar to that of Komamura Sejin and Yukita Joshiro. After reading it, Unohana Retsu had no intention of responding to such a naive idea. How could the hatred and contradictions between Shinigami and Queen C be easily eliminated? Unohana Retsu even suspected that the Queen C Makoto Kurosaki who delivered the letter had some conspiracy in mind. Therefore, Unohana Retsu, who did not want to pay attention to these things, threw the letter into the wastebasket, turned his eyes and looked at the flower arrangement. Perhaps, the Shinigami who was not good at flower arrangement thought that the color combination was quite good. However, in the eyes of a master of flower arrangement like Unohana Retsu, it was just a beginner's work that was superficial. Disorder, discord, messy. Then, Unohana Retsu waved to a team member outside the door, and just when he was about to ask someone to deal with the flower arrangement, his eyes suddenly froze, and then he stared at the flower arrangement. Aesthetically, this flower arrangement obviously has nothing to praise, but, Unohana Retsu slowly stood up and carefully picked up the flower arrangement. The language of flowers, in this messy work composed of a large number of different flowers, the meaning of the combination of the flower languages of those flowers is, I miss the person I cherish all the time, and I will keep my promise and wait for me. Unohana Retsu's eyes trembled slightly. Could it be Makoto? If it's Makoto. With Makoto's letter, Unohana Retsu felt unprecedented excitement and joy in his heart, staring at the flower arrangement in front of him, and then reached out to a place where the flower arrangement had a hidden flaw, and gently pushed away the soil above with his scallion-like fingers. The next moment, great joy completely blossomed on Unohana Retsu's face. Under the soil, there was a petal of the water chestnut flower that seemed to have fallen into it accidentally. In this way, Unohana Retsu completely confirmed the fact that this was a letter from Senju Makoto. However, the real letter was not the letter, but the flower language information composed of this pot of seemingly incongruous flower arrangement. After a long time, Unohana Retsu gradually recovered from the joy and excitement, and stroked the flower arrangement in front of him with his fingers, and said with a hint of dissatisfaction in his tone, Makoto, you used so many flowers, but you didn't add a rose? Chapter 356 Surveillance. About a month later, when Urehara Kisuke returned from his next trip to Seireitei to purchase goods, he also brought back their respective letters and gifts to Senju Makoto. Sitting in the flower shop, Senju Makoto almost walked straight past the gifts of Yukita Joshiro and Komamura Sejin, and looked at the gift given by Unohana teacher in return, a pot of flower arrangement. Then, a smile inadvertently appeared on Senju Makoto's face. From the flower arrangement given by Unohana Retsu, Senju Makoto interpreted the expected flower language letter. For Senju Makoto, this has undoubtedly achieved the most important goal. Forced by Hyoshogu Ichiba's influence on the entire Soul Society, if Senju Makoto's identity is exposed under this situation, in addition to breaking with most of the Shinigami of Seireitei, he may have to flee the Soul Society with Unohana Retsu. This kind of invisible thing, like something that will implicate Unohana Retsu, Senju Makoto naturally will not do it for a momentary thought and impulse. Therefore, on the opening day of the flower shop, when Makoto Senju saw Yorishi Shoin transformed into a black cat, he had the idea of using the Shoin family's channels to secretly restore contact with Unohana teacher. Fortunately, although there were some minor accidents in the middle, with the understanding of Yorishi Shoin, the result that Makoto Senju expected was achieved. Thinking of this, Makoto Senju's nose approached the flower arrangement from Soul Society, gently sniffing the fragrance of the flowers wafting from it, as if he felt the breath left by Unohana Retsu on it. Don't worry, teacher, I already have some ideas for solving it, Makoto Senju thought silently, and then used the ability of spirit control to keep this flower arrangement composed of spirit particles forever. Rem, take good care of the store, Makoto Senju, who had stayed in the flower shop all this time so that he could receive Unohana Retsu's reply as soon as possible, opened his mouth and gave an order to Synopsis, and then went out to the remote mountains and forests outside Karakura town. Long before the flower shop opened, the secret training between Makoto Senju and Kurosaki Masaki had ended. It was not that Kurosaki Masaki was hiding something, but in a very short time, Makoto Senju had completely mastered all the skills that Kurosaki Masaki knew. This speed of learning made Kurosaki Masaki amazed and also hit hard. After all, in the past, among the Quincy clan, Kurosaki Masaki was also a genius in various senses, but everything he had learned for more than 20 years, for Makoto Senju, it took only about a month to completely master it. Of course, it is not that mastering a lot of skills corresponds to having a strong combat power. In actual combat, combat experience, combat instincts and adaptability are all important indicators that affect combat power. Therefore, Kurosaki Masaki originally planned to conduct further exchanges with Makoto Senju to enhance Makoto Senju's combat experience, but was rejected by Makoto Senju. Reason: I don't have much pursuit and interest in fighting, and mastering these inheritances is just to pass them on to future generations one day. This statement made Kurosaki Masaki, who gradually focused on her family and enjoyed a peaceful and quiet life, deeply agree with it, and she stopped forcing it. Of course, in fact, Senju Makoto was more worried that once the formal competition began, it would cause a greater blow to Kurosaki Masaki, a gentle and sunny young woman. What's more, compared with the seemingly gorgeous fighting style of the Quincy, Senju Makoto undoubtedly valued the flying kick. And this time, going to the mountains and forests away from the crowd, Senju Makoto's goal was to further master and develop the flying kick so that it could be integrated with the instant step and become Senju Makoto's exclusive mobile skills. However, what bothered Senju Makoto was that he seemed to have inadvertently aroused the strong curiosity of Shifu Yuan Yorishi, who was almost the same as that of a cat. So much so that Senju Makoto, who arrived in the woods, looked towards it obscurely, although neither the naked eye nor the spiritual pressure sensing could detect any trace of the black cat Yorishi. Even Senju Makoto couldn't help but marvel at the concealment ability of the former secret mobile commander instant god Shifu Yuan Yorishi. However, Makoto Senju had left a seed in Shifu Yorishi's body long ago. Through the connection of forest seed, Makoto Senju could see Shifu Yorishi's whereabouts clearly under his eyes. However, Makoto Senju did not deliberately expose Shifu Yorishi's traces, but began to practice failing Q under Shifu Yorishi's surveillance. The next moment, with the origin as the center, Makoto Senju almost seemed to be transformed into more than 10 residual images at the same time and scattered. Kuronko Yorishi naturally could not look directly at the changes in the spirit particles in the microscopic world, but Makoto Senju's speed made the hidden Kuronko Yorishi's cat pupils slightly condense. So fast. Even compared with Ishida Ryujin, no, it's already slightly faster than Ishida Ryujin. With such an amazing talent, it's no wonder that Masaki was hit hard. Kuronko Yorishi silently commented, it was hard to imagine that this guy was a Quincy who had only started learning failing Q for less than a few months. It's just that I don't believe that you, a bastard, won't reveal any flaws, Kuronko Yorishi thought viciously, and when his head shook slightly, he saw a camera hanging around his neck, muttering. Wait, you dare to take a picture of me? I don't believe that you won't do something obscene. When I take a picture of you, I'll put it in the newspaper, so that the whole Karakura town will remember you. When he thought of the last thought, Kuronko Yorishi's mouth grinned, and his eyes were full of unstoppable expectations. He even saw the bastard Kurosaki Makoto kneeling at his feet and calling him queen. Unfortunately, Senju Makoto didn't know Kuronko Yorishi's plan, and even carried a camera with him, just thinking that Kuronko Yorishi was monitoring him, or Senju Makoto didn't care about Kuronko Yorishi's monitoring at all. The following days were undoubtedly quite regular for Makoto Senju. While silently waiting for the fusion of the ultimate spirit and the instrument, Makoto Senju enjoyed the comfortable and leisurely life as a flower shop owner. And because of the charm of the rental, it soon made this small flower shop a kind of internet celebrity flower shop in Karakura town. Every day, many customers came to see Rem, to buy flowers. The high turnover made Makatao Senju and Synopsis not have to worry about the daily living expenses at all. In addition, Makatao Senju regularly went to the woods in the suburbs to practice the Failing Q, and openly communicated with Unohana Retsu regularly through flower language letters. Chapter 357. Almost beyond the limits of theory time, a few years passed quickly. This was just a blink of an eye for Makatao Senju, who was used to the long life in the Seireitei. However, these few years also allowed Makatao Senju and Rem to truly integrate into the city of Karakusa town to some extent. As for the Black Cat Yorishi, Makatao Senju originally thought that after monitoring for a few months, her patients would be exhausted and disappear. In the end, she didn't expect that the Black Cat Yorishi would moving naturally and become the pet of Kurosaki Flower Shop, and was known as the two iconic existences of Kurosaki Flower Shop together with Rem. Kurosaki Flower Shop. A flower shop with maids and cats, and a super handsome manager. For a while, a word that spread from nowhere made the Kurosaki Flower Shop opened by Makatao Senju really popular, and it became a famous shop in Karakusa town, and in an accident, the flower arrangement works made by Makatao Senju in his spare time were seen by a contemporary flower arrangement master, who was amazed and praised Makatao Senju as the unique flower arrangement master of the younger generation in public many times. Therefore, although Makatao Senju's usual style of doing things has been as low-key as possible in addition to his appearance and temperament that cannot be concealed, he was forced to become a celebrity and artist in Karakusa town. One day, just when Makatao Senju was about to leave the flower shop early to practice Failing Jiao, dang, the door of the flower shop was pushed open, and Masaki Kurosaki, who was filled with a gentle and sunny smile, walked in and joked. "Hey, good morning, great flower arranging artist." Senju Makatao raised his hand and flicked Kurosaki Masaki's forehead unhappily, then said to Synopsis behind him. "If Masaki buys flowers this month, the price will increase by 30%. No, this way, the living expenses will be much tighter." Kurosaki Masaki stuck out her tongue and said as if begging for mercy. Senju Makatao couldn't help but laugh unhappily at this. Although Kurosaki Masaki is a young woman who has given birth to 3 children, she is gentle and sunny, but still as lively and cheerful as a girl. And after thinking that Senju Makatao, who saved her life, is a member of the same clan, she almost completely regards Senju Makatao as a real family member. Whether it is to make the home more warm, or to find a reason to visit Senju Makatao, Kurosaki Masaki comes to buy flowers almost every week. In this way, there is no doubt that the Kurosaki clinic, which was already not doing well, has greater financial pressure on Kurosaki Ishin. "Then I'll give you a free meal this month," Senju Makatao said. "That won't work either. Although you are still single now, you'll meet your beloved sooner or later and get married and have children. You'll have to prepare early." When it came to this topic, Kurosaki Masaki was like a big sister who cared about her little brother. She kept talking non-stop, which made Senju Makatao retreat instantly. She found an excuse and quickly left the flower shop. Senju Makatao, who was far away from the flower shop, couldn't help but wipe his sweat. It's terrible. Senju Makatao believed that if he hadn't run away quickly, Kurosaki Masaki might have started to talk about introducing women to Senju Makatao. The next moment, Kuronko Yorishi came from behind Senju Makatao and landed in Senju Makatao's arms with great skill. "Yorishi, I'm going out to practice this time. Are you coming with me?" Kuronko Yorishi, who was holding Senju Makatao's arms and squinting his eyes as if enjoying the sunshine, answered with some disdain. "You want me to take care of you?" Senju Makatao. "You usually eat my food, drink my drinks, and use my things. Now you, a bastard, have gotten into my arms and you still ask me to take care of you. If it weren't for the need to rely on the Shifen Yuan family's channels to regularly contact Unohana teacher, Senju Makatao would definitely hang up Shifen Yuan Yorishi and beat him up on the spot. Anyway, it was only Kurosaki Makatao who was rude to Shifen Yuan Yorishi. What does it have to do with me, Senju Makatao? However, due to practical factors, Senju Makatao still enjoyed it and decided to keep this note for later. Then, Senju Makatao almost completely ignored the Black Cat Yorishi who was openly getting in the way. After arriving at the woods outside the city, he continued to practice Failing Jiao. Senju Makatao's judgment was not wrong. Failing Jiao is undoubtedly the most suitable movement technique for Senju Makatao's ability. After several years of development and practice, Senju Makatao's Failing Jiao has even gradually begun to break away from the theoretical upper limit and reached a very scary level. However, because Kuronko Yorishi always stayed by his side, Senju Cheng had to delay his practice of combining the flying kick and instant step. However, even so, relying only on the speed of the flying kick, witnessing Senju Cheng's almost indistinguishable after images, Kuronko Yorishi's eyes flashed with a rare fighting spirit. Fast. Too fast. In the first few months of monitoring Senju Cheng, Kuronko Yorishi deeply felt the huge improvement in Senju Cheng's speed. Until now, Kuronko Yorishi felt that the opportunity he had waited for so long was almost here. Kurosaki Cheng, this man really practiced the Queen's flying kick to the limit that almost transcended theory in just a few years. Then, Kuronko Yorishi slowly returned to his human form, and then took out a set of criminal warfare outfits that he had prepared in advance and casually put them on, grinning slightly, swoosh. The next moment, Shifunuan Yorishi also turned into a shadow that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye and ran straight towards Senju Cheng, and kicked towards Senju Cheng's chest. Boom. A huge roar sounded. Shifunuan Yorishi looked at the empty deep pit under his feet, and then looked up at Senju Cheng, who had suddenly opened up a distance of hundreds of meters without knowing when. Yorishi, what do you mean by this? Senju Cheng frowned and asked. Do you still want to ask? Of course it's a fight. Shifunuan Yorishi seemed to be a little uncomfortable and pulled his collar, and spoke with a certain heroic demeanor. Kurosaki Cheng, just as I'm close to transcending the limit of Shunpo, you're almost at the level of Hiram Kyaku, you know what? I was once called the god of Shunpo in Soul Society to praise my attainments in Shunpo, but beyond that level, the whole world slows down in front of you. It's so boring, so dull. The passion that I once imagined being able to enjoy at extreme speed is completely meaningless if it's just one person, so, let's have a competition. At the end, Shifunuan Yorishi's tone had become more excited than ever. Chapter 358. Pleasure at extreme speed. The next moment, Shifunuan Yorishi didn't even give Senju Cheng a chance to refuse, and turned into a shadow and ran straight towards Senju Cheng. Instant step. As a Shinigami who also possesses the captain-level instant step level, Senju Cheng couldn't help but be moved when he saw Shifunuan Yorishi's movement. So fast. Yorishi was not kidding, this was a terrifying speed that ordinary captain-level instant steps couldn't even see the moving trajectory. As for keeping up, it was even more impossible. And the moment this thought came to Senju Cheng's mind, in this extremely fast after-image, his body undoubtedly moved first. Unlike the instant step that completely relies on the strength of the spirit body and the spiritual pressure, the essence of the flying linkage is to control the spirit to carry it, and at this moment, it also broke out at a terrifying speed under Senju Cheng's feet. The two have completely different principles and techniques, but they're extremely close in speed. For a moment, the two figures, one black and one white, in the woods seemed to have completely disappeared, but the occasional collision sound seemed to sound at the same time in different directions of the woods. Extreme speed. Undoubtedly extreme speed. All the surrounding scenes seemed to have completely turned into phantoms in the eyes of Senju Cheng and Shifunuan Yorishi, and were constantly retreating at an indistinguishable speed. The strange thing was that Senju Cheng and Shifunuan Yorishi seemed to be relatively still with each other. But in a trance, it seemed that the world slowed down, and the opponent in front of them instantly turned into a residual image and disappeared in front of them, fast and slow. It seemed to be a wonderful and contradictory reincarnation. Unconsciously, the figures of Senju Cheng and Shifunuan Yorishi began to leave the huge suburban forest and turn to compete in a larger venue. Under the extreme speed, everything around seemed to be blurred, only the opponent was becoming clear, and the opponent's every move was becoming more and more sensitive, and their own speed seemed to increase unconsciously. Joy. At this moment, Shifunuan Yorishi felt unprecedented joy. At the end of the extreme speed known as the God of Flash, for the first time, he found an opponent who was truly meaningful to compete with. It was so joyful, while Senju Cheng's feeling might not be as strong as Shifunuan Yorishi's, the world was madly retreating in his eyes, but there was another existence that was advancing at the same level as himself. Very good. While enjoying this wonderful feeling, Senju Cheng's eyes were also recording Shifunuan Yorishi's flash step from time to time. In terms of flash step attainments, Shifunuan Yorishi, who was known as the God of Flash, was undoubtedly the ceiling in the true sense. However, even for ordinary Shinigami, if it was twice, 10 times, or 100 times faster than him, ordinary Shinigami would only feel indistinguishable. Therefore, this was also that first time that Senju Cheng saw the flash step of a truly superordinary captain-level Shinigami at such a close distance. Time seemed to slow down at the extreme speed. When Shifu Yuan Yorishi and Senju Makoto felt satisfied and stopped, they even forgot how long they had moved to each other. But at this moment, Yorishi Shifu Yuan was already sweating all over, and the criminal warfare outfit on her body was completely soaked with sweat, which completely highlighted Yorishi Shifu Yuan's graceful and hot figure. Then, Yorishi Shifu Yuan licked her lips slightly in front of Makoto Senju's face and praised him bluntly. Makoto Kurosaki, there is no doubt that you are the fastest man I have ever seen, but you are also the only man who can satisfy me completely. It is so pleasant. Makoto Senju. If it weren't for the fact that the criminal warfare outfit on Yorishi Shifu Yuan fit her body perfectly, it would be clear that Yorishi Shifu Yuan didn't have any recording pen hidden on her body. Makoto Senju even suspected that Yorishi Shifu Yuan's satisfied and hungry tone was digging a hole for herself. Then, before Makoto Senju could clarify, Yorishi Shifu Yuan returned to the appearance of a black cat again, and then lightly jumped and landed in Makoto Senju's arms skillfully, yawning tiredly and satisfied, and said lazily, "It's almost time for today, let's go home," Senju Makoto complained, unable to hold back any longer. "Wait, where is your home? What's with the tone of us going out to have sex without telling our children?" "Ah, isn't it? We were playing Fast and Furious without telling Rem." Kuronko Yorishi answered as a matter of course. Senju Makoto. For a moment, Senju Makoto didn't know how to refute Kuronko Yorishi, who seemed to have become quite flexible in some aspects. But, Senju Makoto's palm unconsciously continued to stroke Kuronko Yorishi in his arms, secretly complaining. "Go home. I'll take you back as a pet, and force you to drink hot milk when I go back, and keep you as a pet completely." Of course, the wonderful touch of Kuronko Yorishi's fur in his form was not one of the important factors that interfered with Senju Makoto's decision. Then, Senju Makoto simply identified the direction and found that he seemed to be quite far away from Karakura town, this charge, probably nearly 1,000 miles. As Makoto Senju rushed back to Karakura town with his flying legs, he couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. How could this bastard Yorishi lie comfortably in my arms and sleep all the way back? Just because he was masturbated. TSK, damn it. She was the one who proposed the competition, I should be riding Yorishi back. Wait. Something seems a little wrong. As Makoto Senju returned to Karakura town, he kept complaining in his heart, and his eyes turned slightly to the other side of the woods outside the city. A chucker's level hollow. Makoto Senju judged the spiritual pressure fluctuations with a little surprise, and muttered. And, there is not only one, but this number is 5, and the spiritual pressure is also covered by the ghost barrier. In an instant, Makoto Senju's heart flashed with deep doubts. During the years he lived in Karakura town, Makoto Senju knew the situation of the entire town very well. Normally, even though Karakura town was a special heavy spiritual place, it rarely attracted Jillian level hollows, which meant that the number of ordinary hollows was slightly more than that of other areas. But now, 5 Achuka's level hollows suddenly appeared at once, especially when Makoto Senju and Yorishi Shirin briefly left Karakura town. This almost made Makoto Senju instantly conclude that this was not a normal event. He stroked the black cat Yorishi, who seemed to have fallen asleep due to exhaustion, and quickly moved towards that area. Chapter 359 Black Cat Shoot. As Makoto Senju approached the suburban woods blocked by the kidden barrier, he closely sensed and analyzed the structure in front of him, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Originally, Makoto Senju thought it was the kidden barrier set up by the Masked Corps, or that Aizen Sosok had set up something here. However, the kidden barrier in front of him looked more like a technological product. Uehara Kisuke. Or maybe Kurosachi Mayuri. Makoto Senju secretly guessed that based on his understanding, the two most likely to have the ability to develop such a technological product were Uehara Kisuke and Kurosachi Mayuri. Then, Makoto Senju gently placed his palm on the kidden barrier, further sensing the spiritual pressure fluctuations hidden in the kidden barrier. In addition to the 5 Achuka's level hollows, there are also Ishida Sokjin and Ishida Rai. During the years he lived in Karakura town, Makoto Senju was invited by Raijin Ishida to visit him many times, so he was familiar with the spiritual pressure of Raijin Ishida's father, Sojun Ishida, and his son, Rai Ishida. At this moment, Sojun Ishida's spiritual pressure was extremely unstable. Without a moment's hesitation, Makoto Senju stepped back, and a seemingly plain blue spiritual bow condensed in his hand, and then he directly put Kuronko Yorishi on the bowstring. Kuronko Yorishi. Kuronko Yorishi, who was originally sleeping lazily and comfortably, was stunned and did not react. A large amount of spiritual particles wrapped Kuronko Yorishi and condensed into a fat round arrow. Swoosh! The next moment, as Makotao Senju's fingers loosened, Kuronko Yorishi was launched directly and crashed into the ghost barrier. Although Kuronko Yorishi seemed to be using some artifact to realize that his body could change into the black cat form at will, it was still essentially a high-density spiritual body of the captain-level death god. Bang! A crisp sound rang out, and the ghost barrier in front of him was like glass hit by a stone, and a hole was directly opened. Then, Senju Makotao flashed into it. The sudden change of the ghost barrier also made all the beings inside seem to be stunned for a moment, and they cast their eyes towards Senju Makotao. Senju Makotao's eyes swept around, and 5 huge sub-Chekage-level hollows almost occupied most of the space in the ghost barrier. In addition, the old man of the Ishida family, who was surrounded by many hollows, was covered in blood and panting heavily. He protected Ishida behind him in an extremely embarrassed figure. The situation seemed very clear and simple. As a grandfather, Ishida Sokjin had the habit of taking Ishida to the suburban woods for guidance regularly in order to inherit the Quincy clan. This time, it seemed that he was accidentally perceived by 5 sub-Chekage-level hollows. However, only Senju Makotao knew very well that there were not only these people in front of him, but also that captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurotsuchi. At this moment, Mayuri Kurotsuchi was using a spirit particle device that seemed to be the same type as Aizen Sosuk, monitoring everything from a distance. Through the ability of spirit particle control, Senju Makotao could clearly distinguish the exaggerated makeup and expression of the mad scientist Mayuri Kurotsuchi, as well as the changes in his expression caused by the appearance of the uninvited guest, Makotao Senju. The Black Cat Yorishi, who was shot out by Senju Makotao and felt that he was almost damaged, was furious at this moment, ignoring the 5 Chekage around him, and shouted at Senju Makotao. "Hey, bastard, what are you doing?" Senju Makotao said with a somewhat apologetic tone. "Sorry, Yorishi, the ghost barrier just now has a special defensive effect on spirit particle arrows, so treating you as an arrow is the fastest way to break through." In this regard, Senju Makotao was naturally not fooling the Black Cat Yorishi. In Senju Makotao's eyes, the changes, structures and compositions of spirit particles are endless, which also allows Senju Makotao to instantly distinguish that the ghost barrier just now has a special effect on trapping the Quincy. It is precisely because of this that I am afraid that Ishida Sokjin will not be able to break the ghost barrier when he is trapped by 5 Chekage. In the case of not wanting to expose the ability of spirit control, for Senju Makotao, the simplest way is naturally to shoot Kuronko Yorishi like an arrow. After a pause, Senju Makotao said sincerely, "The situation is urgent, please forgive me for not being able to tell you in time. When I go back later, I will prepare more hot milk for you to apologize." Kuronko Yorishi glanced around and realized that something seemed wrong. He jumped to Senju Makotao's shoulder in a flash and spoke. "Damn it, who likes hot milk? Prepare the best Sakura sake for me." "Okay." Senju Makotao responded, raised the spirit bow in his hand, took a fighting stance, and then shouted to Ishida Sokjin on the other side. "Mr. Ishida, are you okay?" Ishida Sokjin, whose forehead was constantly covered with beads of sweat, raised his gradually blurred vision, barely distinguished the figure of Senju Makotao, and shouted. "Mr. Kurosaki Makotao?" "Yes." Senju Makotao responded, and then said. "Mr. Ishida, you hold on for a while, wait for me to deal with these hollows first. This is a trap, Mr. Kurosaki Makotao, you take Rick and leave quickly." Before Ishida Sokjin finished speaking, he felt that the figure in the distance flashed, and Senju Makotao crossed the distance blocked by many Chekage in the middle and appeared next to Ishida Sokjin. This amazing speed made Ishida Sokjin stunned. In the past, Ishida Sokjin's impression of Senju Makotao was that he was just an extremely talented Quincy, but unfortunately, he was not very interested in fighting. He only practiced with Kurosaki Masaki for about a month before stopping. In the past, Ishida Sokjin felt very sorry for this, but because of the idea of respecting personal wishes, he never took the initiative to persuade Kurosaki Makotao as an elder. However, after witnessing this unexpectedly amazing speed, Ishida Sokjin was delighted. He quickly pushed Ishida, who was protecting behind him, to Kurosaki Makotao and said, "Mr. Kurosaki Makotao, please take Rai away from here." Senju Makotao. Looking at Ishida, who was about the same age as Kurosaki Ichigo and about 10 years old, Senju Makotao couldn't help but react. Mr. Ishida, what's the matter with this tone of entrusting an orphan? Senju Cheng said with some laughter. Ishida also realized that something was wrong, and he looked at his grandfather Ishida Sojin, whom he had admired in the past, with wide eyes, and shouted, "Grandpa, I don't want to leave. I can fight too, and I can fight alongside you." Chapter 360. Your battle is in the future. Good boy, Rai, it's too early for you to fight now. Your battle will be in the future. Now let Grandpa take care of the battle. The grey-haired Ishida Sojin smiled kindly at Ishida Rai and said, "No, Grandpa, didn't you admit that I am a qualified queency? I can fight too. No matter what, I will never abandon you." As Ishida Rai's seemingly unusually firm voice sounded, a spirit bow much more gorgeous than Senju Cheng's was formed in Ishida Rai's hand, and a small spirit arrow was condensed out. The next moment, as Ishida Rai's fingers loosened, a chopstick-sized and exquisite spirit arrow was fired out, fiercely colliding with the nearest Cheng-ge's, and then, it was bounced off. This scene made the atmosphere of the scene seem a little weird. Pucci, However, Senju Cheng's character is gentle and kind, and he would not laugh at others so openly, but Kuroko Yorishi obviously would not deliberately consider the feelings of a little kid, and laughed loudly while lying on Senju Cheng's shoulder. What? Is this considered a queency? With this kind of power, even if you pick your teeth, you can't break through the gap and enter the depths, right? Kuroko Yorishi's ruthless words also made Ishida Rai, who originally wanted to prove himself to Ishida Sojin, blush. "Cat, how can you talk?" "No, that's not the point. I was actually laughed at by a cat." However, no matter how unwilling Ishida Rai was, he could not refute the fact that he seemed to be unable to help at all. For this scene, Ishida Sojin's kind eyes couldn't help but reveal a bit of helplessness, compared with Ishida Raijin and Kurosaki Masaki, who both had the pure-blooded queency talent comparable to the vast old-level hollow at the age of more than 10. Since Ishida Rai's mother is a half-blood queency, Ishida Rai's talent is only considered to be quite good among half-blood queency. But among the queency clan, the gap in talent, and combat power between pure-blood queency and half-blood queency is like a natural chasm. Although Ishida Rai has been practicing very hard in recent years, the gap is obvious. However, it's okay, Rai, one day you'll grow up. Ishida Sojin kindly encouraged Ishida Rai, and then stretched out his hand again and slowly pushed Ishida Rai to the side of Senju Cheng. Behind Ishida Sojin, the 5 Cheng-ge's that had stopped briefly due to the appearance of Senju Cheng, at this moment, they seemed to be provoked by Ishida Rai's teasing embroidery needle spirit arrows, and they all became angry and started to attack Ishida Sojin again. Moreover, the 5 Cheng-ge's all gathered their void flashes at the same time, as if they wanted to kill everyone including Senju Cheng and Ishida Sojin all at once. "Rick, Grandpa will always be proud of you." Ishida Sojin, who had his back to Ishida Rai, seemed to have completely straightened his waist, which was originally hunched due to old age, and a spirit particle shield formed by a large number of spirit particles appeared in his hand. At this moment, Ishida Sojin's idea was undoubtedly to protect Senju Cheng and Ishida Rai behind him and buy time for them to leave. A series of memory fragments kept emerging in Ishida Sojin's mind, and finally fixed on his son Ishida Raijin and grandson Ishida Rai, and his face also had a few more relieved and satisfied smiles. "What a long life, the last remaining body can still be used to protect my grandson." At this moment, the void flashes of the 5 Cheng-ge's were released almost at the same time, almost overwhelming Ishida Sojin. There was no hesitation in Ishida Sojin's eyes. All the remaining strength was poured into the spirit shield in his hand, giving Senju Cheng and Ishida Rai a chance to escape. However, just when the large piece of virtual flash almost hit the spirit shield in front of Ishida Sojin, a thick spirit arrow suddenly passed over Ishida Sojin's head and collided with the 5 virtual flashes that were gradually converging. Boom! Unlike Ishida Rai's spirit arrow that bounced off when it hit a Cheng-ge's, the seemingly simple and thick spirit arrow seemed to be unstoppable and went upstream against the virtual flash, breaking the virtual flashes with amazing destructive power wherever it passed. What? This scene not only shocked Ishida Rai, who had tears in his eyes, but also made Ishida Sojin, who had already prepared himself, was stunned. Bang! Finally, under the gaze of Ishida Rai and Ishida Sojin, the spirit arrow broke through the virtual flash, rolled back the virtual flash, and landed on the chest of an Cheng-ge's. Pierced through. The Cheng-ge's didn't even have time to react, and its entire chest seemed to disappear completely the moment the thick and simple spirit arrow penetrated it. Roar the weak roar, the figure of the Cheng-ge's quickly dissipated in unwillingness and fear. Until this time, Ishidori's neck seemed to be completely stiff, and he slowly turned his head, looking at the palm behind him that slowly lowered the hand holding the spirit bow, and his expression didn't even change the slightest. Ishidori was stunned for several breaths, and then he uttered a sentence with difficulty. So strong. As for Ishida Sojin, he also looked at Senju Makoto with a look of surprise, and asked in shock. Didn't Mr. Kurosaki Makoto only train with Masaki for a month? And according to rumors, he has no interest in fighting. How could he be so powerful? No way, being uninterested in fighting and not having talent are two different things. When explaining to this point, Senju Makoto suddenly realized something, and quickly lowered his head to Ishidori. Don't think too much, Rai, I'm not hinting at anything, it's just that I only trained with Masaki for about a month at the beginning, and it was entirely because I took only a month to fully master all the Quincy techniques of the Kurosaki family. However, it would have been better if Senju Makoto didn't have this extra sentence, because doing so would undoubtedly have dealt a greater blow to Ishidori's young heart. 1 month. This made Ishidori, who had been training for several years, feel a sense of dejection. The gap, is it really that big? However, the next moment, Ishidori only felt a warm palm pressed on his head, and Senju Makoto's gentle voice sounded, saying, "Little brat, don't create any unnecessary burdens. Your battle is in the future." I once heard a proverb. Don't despise the poor young. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 361. 3 Elements of Archery. Don't bully the poor young. This sentence seemed to have some kind of magic power, which instantly swept away the decadent psychology of the young Ishidori, who had been hit hard, and suddenly an inexplicable passion and confidence surged out. That's right, don't bully the poor young. Even if I am not as good as this guy now, in the future, I may not be able to beat him. In an instant, Ishidori almost firmly engraved this sentence in the depths of his heart, staring at Senju Makoto in front of him with burning eyes, and regarded Senju Makoto as the goal he vowed to surpass. This scene was seen in the eyes of Ishida Sojin. For Ishida Sojin, who didn't know how many storms he had experienced, this sentence "don't bully the poor young" did not have any meaning. With Senju Makoto's terrifying talent, I'm afraid that even if Ishidori continued to say "don't bully the poor middle-aged" and "don't bully the poor old" in the future, he would not have any hope of surpassing Senju Makoto. Perhaps the death of the greatest, in the end, is the best ending for Ishidori for this obsession. Of course, even if Ishida Sojin understands the huge gap in talent in reality, he will not deliberately discourage Ishidori's enthusiasm. Instead, he is happy to see Ishidori, who is full of motivation, try to catch up. Even if the final result is most likely to be failure, Ishida Sojin believes that the scenery of Ishidori during the pursuit is enough to make Ishidori not regret his life. Then, without waiting for Ishidori to say anything, Senju Makoto raised his hand and pushed Ishidori into Ishida Sojin's arms, and then said, "Similarly, Mr. Ishida, your battle is in the past. Don't be stubborn now. Leave these hollows to me. You should take care of yourself." Senju Makoto said as he slowly walked forward and stood in front of Ishida Sojin and Ishidori. He joked in a gentle tone but seemed a little distressed. "Otherwise, if Longxian knows that I left his old father and ran away, he might smash my flower shop." For a moment, in Ishidori's eyes, the back of Uncle Kurosaki Makoto, who seemed to have a very good relationship with his father and mother, and often the three of them hid in a room doing something, became faintly taller. Wait, Ishida Sojin suddenly thought of something, put his hand on Senju Makoto's shoulder, looked at Ishidori with some distress, and then whispered a reminder. "Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, the enemy is not just the hollow, be careful." Hearing this, the black cat Yoichi, who was lying on Senju Makoto's shoulder, glanced at the ghost barrier that still surrounded this place, and instantly realized something. Senju Makoto naturally understood this very well, and even Megumi Kurosachi, who arranged all this, was very angry when the first Uchikage was killed. These Uchikage are most likely the reformed hollows of the Technology Development Bureau, and they should be the captives captured by the Expeditionary Corps in the Great Battle in Huko Mundo. Kurosachi Megumi secretly planned to attack Ishida Ryujin, one of the few remaining pure-blooded Quincy in the world, and Senju Makoto had already guessed his purpose. It was just a pity that since Senju Cheng had encountered this incident, he couldn't just watch Ishida Raijin's old father die in front of him, and then be dissected and studied by Kurosaki Mayuri in a fancy way. The seemingly simple and plain spirit bow was slowly pulled open by Senju Cheng again, and a thick and somewhat dazzling spirit arrow condensed in it. In fact, in my opinion, the essence of a queency is the same as that of an archer in a video game. There is no need to consider close combat, and there is no need to deliberately waste energy to create a nice shape. How to shoot faster, shoot more, and shoot harder, these are the three elements that an archer needs to consider. In stark contrast to Senju Cheng's calm tone that seemed to be educating his juniors, the remaining four huge Cheng-ges that were as big as buildings rushed towards Senju Cheng from all directions. The huge body, heavy spiritual pressure, and amazing pressure, wherever those Cheng-ges passed, the earth was also cracking, and the air seemed to be torn apart. A strong storm rushed towards Senju Cheng, blowing his white casual robe. And Senju Cheng still maintained a fairly standard bow posture, with his back straight, and his gentle eyes slowly became serious. The next moment, in front of Ishida Rai's confused eyes, the spirit bow held by Senju Cheng suddenly expanded several times, almost as tall as Senju Cheng. Well, let's give it a name. Let's call this arrow the serious arrow. As Senju Cheng's joking voice fell, a spirit arrow that was so thick that it seemed to be completely comparable to Ishida Rai's entire body suddenly shot out. Swoosh! The strong sound of breaking through the air screamed harshly in Ishida Rai's eardrum. Ishida Rai subconsciously covered his ears with both hands, and his eyes were fixed on the direction where the spirit arrow shot. Roar! And Yakeis, who was at the forefront of the spirit arrow, seemed to feel some kind of fatal threat, and burst into a furious roar, and his huge arms crossed to block the spirit arrow. But, swoosh, it penetrated. As if there was no obstacle at all, the huge body of the Cheng-ge was instantly pierced by the thick spirit arrow. Ishida Rai was shocked by the scene, but found that Senju Cheng had dispersed the spirit bow in his hand, turned around and looked at him with a smile. Ishida Rai's face turned pale, and he even felt that the shadows of the other three Cheng-ge were about to cover him, and he subconsciously shouted to warn. Be careful. There are still three Cheng-ge. Senju Cheng said as if he didn't realize it. Don't worry, some results are already determined the moment the arrow was shot. Just when Ishida Rai, who didn't know what was going on, watched the attack of the three Cheng-ge about to fall on Senju Cheng, and almost subconsciously wanted to close his eyes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. There was a big hole in the chest of the three Cheng-ge, and the three big holes even showed a faint curve. One arrow killed four hollows. Ishida Rai murmured in disbelief, and felt that everything in front of him was like a dream. In response to Ishida Rai, Senju Cheng, who had his back to the three hollows, said in a relaxed tone. Nothing, just a little trick. Let the arrow make a small turn, as long as the moment the arrow was shot. Chapter 362. What are your qualifications? At the moment when the spirit arrow is launched, when he said this, Makoto Senju raised his hand, held a thin spirit line between his two fingers and showed it to Ishida Rai, and said with a smile. Use the spirit line to maintain the connection with the spirit arrow, and manipulate it through this spirit line when necessary, so as to achieve an unexpected effect on the enemy. As Makoto Senju finished speaking, Ishida Rai was still immersed in this novel technique that could be called a fantastic idea, but Ishida Sojin couldn't help but speak. Excellent. This is completely the idea of Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, right? It is a technique developed based on the traditional fighting skills of the Kurosaki family in the past. It's just a little trick. I'm sorry to make you laugh, Mr. Ishida. Makoto Senju replied modestly. Ishida Sojin couldn't help but sigh and said when he heard it. I really can't keep up with the times. Mr. Kurosaki Makoto's ideas are really unique and admirable. When he said this, Ishida Sojin looked at Senju Makoto with a bright look of admiration. Senju Makoto smiled and said, Mr. Ishida, since the hollow has been destroyed, let's leave first. Your injuries seem to need treatment as soon as possible. No problem, Ishida Sojin said with a kind smile. Please Mr. Kurosaki Makoto take Rai out first. I will rest here for a while and then follow on my own. Senju Makoto was slightly startled, and then he understood what Ishida Sojin meant. Ishida Sojin obviously understood that there was the shadow of Seireitei behind the attack of those Cheng-ge. Before the threat from Seireitei was specifically resolved, Ishida Sojin's judgment was probably that he was worried that Ishida Rai and Ishida Raijin would be implicated. After a pause, Ishida Sojin seemed to have thought of something and said, Longxian is quite opposed to Rai becoming a queency, thinking that with his mixed blood qualifications, he won't be able to go far, and it's better for him to live as an ordinary human being. However, how could there be leaves that are not wet under the storm? So can you ask Mr. Kurosaki Makoto to take care of Rai in the future? If Mr. Kurosaki Makoto's guidance is there, I will feel much more at ease. At the end of the speech, the grey-haired Ishida sergeant bowed slightly to Senju Makoto, and his tone was sincere. At this moment, Ishida Sojin was no longer a pure-blooded queency who had many glorious experiences, nor did he care about the dignity of an elder. He was just an old man who hoped to find a reliable shelter for his grandson Ishida Rai as much as possible. Seeing this, Senju Makoto hurriedly helped Ishida Sojin up. Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, do you agree? Ishida Sojin asked hopefully. Senju Makoto shook his head slightly and spoke. Mr. Ishida, I've already said that it's better for you to take care of Rai yourself. As for what you're worried about, at this moment, a portal suddenly opened in front of Makoto Senju and Sojin Ishida, and a figure wearing a captain's adori walked out first. Exaggerated makeup, weird expressions, and a chilling look, captain of the 12th Division and director of the Technology Development Bureau, Mayuri Kurosaki. Mayuri Kurosaki turned his head and looked left and right, speaking in a rather exaggerated manner. Sorry, the support came a little late. I didn't expect that those hollows had been killed. When he said this, Mayuri Kurosaki's eyes seemed to tilt unnaturally. He first glanced at Sojin Ishida, then fell on Makoto Senju, and spoke word by word. You killed too quickly, didn't you? Ishida Sojin and Kurosaki Makoto, this makes me feel a little embarrassed. The hollows killed by a queensies cannot re-enter the soul cycle. After these words came out, Ishida Sojin's expression undoubtedly looked quite ugly. This excuse was also the excuse for the Seireitei to launch a war against the remaining queensies in the world, which led to a significant reduction in the number of queensies in the world. After that, the remaining queensies in the world were not allowed to destroy hollows on their own, and were brought under the surveillance of the Seireitei. This matter was entirely done by me, and I will cooperate with you in the investigation. Before Ishida Sojin could finish, Senju Makoto raised his hand to stop Ishida Sojin from speaking next, and spoke. That's not quite right, is it? I've talked to Captain Yukitik before. Captain Yukitik is in charge of the purification of the human world in the Seireitei. I've never heard that the 12th Division needs to intervene in such matters. As soon as these words came out, Kurosaki Mayuri's expression changed slightly. He looked at Kurosaki Makoto with an unfriendly look and said, What do you mean, kid? After a pause, Kurosaki Mayuri seemed to have thought of something, and said with a strange and expectant look. In that case, how about you come with me to the Seireitei to meet Captain Yukitik? Senju Makoto could almost guess what Kurosaki Mayuri was thinking with his eyes closed. Among all the captains, the top three who were most indifferent to the rules were Aizen Sasuke, Zaraka Kinpuchi and Kurosaki Mayuri. Among them, although Senju Makoto had not had much contact with Kurosaki Mayuri in the past, he also understood that Kurosaki Mayuri was a madman who was completely focused on scientific research, and he almost never cared about the rules. Therefore, if Makoto Senju followed Mayuri Kurosaki to the Seireitei, he would have been poisoned by Mayuri Kurosaki before he even left the World Gate, and would have been taken back to the 12th Division for dissection and research. Even if he could finally meet Yukitik Jushiro, he would have been transformed and played around by Mayuri Kurosaki. Facing Mayuri Kurosaki's weird and creepy eyes, Makoto Senju, who would have subconsciously chosen to solve the problem through Yorishi Shiuin, suddenly felt that it seemed a bit unnecessary. To deal with a guy like Mayuri Kurosaki, some more direct things would become much more practical compared to the rules. What's more, Makoto Senju's current situation is no longer the same as when he was in the Seireitei, where he needed to be wary of beings who are stronger than himself. Now, in addition to Hayashuba Wichibaya, Aizen Sasuke and Yuthwatch, who were the real threats to Makoto Senju, are only half of them in Makoto Senju's eyes. The reason why Senju Makoto didn't want to return to Soul Society was that he didn't want Hayashuba Wichibaya to notice his existence. The two sides went to war and destroyed the entire Soul Society. Therefore, Senju Makoto showed a gentle smile on his face, opened his squinting eyes a little, and uttered a few words. Who do you think you are? Do you have the qualifications to invite me? Chapter 363 I'll show you only once. As soon as these words came out, the scene seemed to be completely quiet in an instant. Kurosaki Mayuri and the large number of 12th Division members following behind him all had frozen expressions. Ishida Sojin and Ishida Rai looked at Senju Makoto in shock. As for Kuronko Yorishi, who was originally lying on Senju Makoto's shoulder, he had already stood up, ready to be used by Senju Makoto as a tool to resolve the threat from Kurosaki Mayuri. At this moment, he also looked at Senju Makoto in disbelief, not expecting Senju Makoto to say such arrogant words. In Kuronko Yorishi's impression in the past, Senju Makoto seemed to be a man who always took everything lightly, and spent most of his time leisurely managing the flower shop, or gathering with his clan members Kurosaki Masaki and Ishida Raijin. He had no ambitions, was gentle and full of love for many things, and practicing the Hylian Q seemed to be based on some kind of interest and hobby. In addition, he maintained daily communication with the 3 captains of the 13th Division, and seemed to be considering the future living environment for the few remaining Quincy groups. After Mayuri Kurosaki came to his senses, he seemed to be completely furious. "What are you talking about, you bastard? What qualifications do I have? Have you forgotten your identity, a small, pitiful, weak Quincy?" In response to Mayuri Kurosaki, Makoto Senju looked at him with contempt, as if he was looking at trash and garbage. "Mayuri Kurosaki, don't think that your plan is so brilliant. Whether it's those hollows or the seemingly hidden ghost barrier, they are all ridiculous." After a pause, Makoto Senju sneered and said, "You are just like a stink bug hiding in a gutter, relying only on the reputation of the entire Seireitei." The repeated ridicule by the Quincy he despised undoubtedly completely angered Mayuri Kurosaki, who had a high opinion of himself. His twitching face slowly opened his mouth, revealing his teeth that were deliberately painted yellow, and he said, "I've changed my mind. I was originally planning to study you Quincy's and then piece together your bodies and deal with them cleanly. Now, I've decided to use your bodies and even your souls forever, and experiment with different things over and over again." "Oh? Naked threat or declaration of war?" Senju Makoto said in a contemptuous tone. "Unfortunately, the person standing in front of me is not the entire Gotti 13 as in the legend, but only you, Kurosaki Mayuri." And according to the spiritual pressure I sensed, Senju Makoto said with a disdainful smile, "You don't seem to be qualified to make such a threat to me from the perspective of strength." Kurosaki Mayuri. As one of the captains of the Gotti 13, Kurosaki Mayuri had never been ridiculed like this before, except by the former captain Urehara Kisuke. As his anger continued to accumulate, Kurosaki Mayuri had almost entered a state similar to red temperature. With his anger rising, he subconsciously drew out his zanpakutō. "Open your claws, and kill Jitsu." As Kurosaki Mayuri finished his words, the zanpakutō in his hand began to transform rapidly. However, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Several spirit arrows suddenly appeared in front of Kurosaki Mayuri at a terrifying speed, piercing his shoulders and knees accurately. Puff. The situation changed in an instant, and the blood splashed, making everyone unable to react. No one thought that Kurosaki Mayuri would suddenly release his zanpakutō, and no one saw clearly when Senju Makoto shot the spirit arrows. The next moment, with Kurosaki Mayuri's knees and shoulders completely disabled, the whole person knelt on the ground uncontrollably, and the arm holding the zanpakutō also drooped to the ground weakly, as if he couldn't even draw the sword and point it at Senju Makoto. Facing Kurosaki Mayuri's angry eyes, Senju Makoto slowly dissipated the spirit bow in his hand, and asked with a somewhat puzzled tone, "Captain Kurosaki Mayuri, I really doubt whether you were a combat-type Shinigami. If you were a combat-type captain-level Shinigami, how could you be so naive to recite the Shikai release words in front of the enemy? But if you are not a combat-type captain-level Shinigami, what courage makes you choose to take the initiative to draw your sword and release hostility?" After a pause, Senju Makoto did not forget to remind, "If I treated you as an equal hollow and subconsciously aimed at your vital points, I'm afraid you would have died." Captain Kurosaki Mayuri should really be grateful for being a member of the 13th Gotti squad. Senju Makoto's seemingly gentle and indifferent contemptuous words were undoubtedly devouring the last bit of Kurosaki Mayuri's reason. "Asshole, I will make you completely regret the consequences of provoking and angering a captain." Kurosaki Mayuri shouted in a low voice, and the spiritual pressure on his body suddenly and violently erupted. Bankai. Golden Hijisha Jitsu. Instantly, the strange zanpakutō that Mayuri had held in his hand expanded rapidly, as if a huge creature had emerged from the zanpakutō. It looked like a reptile that was much larger than Killian, with a head like a golden baby's head, a pair of scary grey eyes, countless densely packed sharp blades on its neck, and countless columnar soft bodies similar to reptiles' feet under its body to support its body. The next moment, a piercing and sharp sound similar to a baby's scream was heard, and Golden Hygia Shojitsu swallowed and exhaled purple poison gas, pushing everything towards Senju Cheng. This form, rather than being a zanpakutō Bankai of the death god, is more like a terrifying Cheng-ge-level hollow. However, the spiritual pressure released by Meguri Kurosaki and the Golden Hygia Shojitsu of this moment is much more terrifying than that of ordinary Uchukas, and the various strange features on the Golden Hygia Shojitsu all indicate that they're some kind of lethal weapons. Kuronko Yorishi hesitated for a moment, glanced at Senju Cheng's profile that seemed to have no retreat, and couldn't help but remind him. Kurosaki Cheng, why don't you give in a little? No one knows how many deadly things are hidden in this thing. Even a slight touch can be fatal to a human body. Senju Cheng tilted his head and showed a gentle smile, which made Kuronko Yorishi slightly startled, but then he heard Senju Cheng speak. In front of the younger generation of the Queency, the elders also have times when they cannot retreat. Rick, watch carefully, I will only show you once. Defeating the captain-level Shinigami's Bankai is not as difficult as you think. Chapter 364. Grown up 3 Nolali. The wind, as if it was pressed down by the Golden Hygia Shojitsu like a small mountain, became more and more violent. Senju Cheng faced the fierce wind, and with his hands pulling in the air, a seemingly simple spirit bow was formed, and a spirit arrow condensed on it. The next moment, Senju Cheng's fingers pulling the bowstring of the spirit bow loosened. A serious arrow. In Senju Cheng's faint voice, the spirit arrow seemed to roll up a huge storm and rushed towards the huge Golden Hygia Shojitsu. Boom. It was obviously just a seemingly fragile spirit arrow, but the moment it came into contact with the Golden Hygia Shojitsu, it burst out with unimaginable penetrating power. The ultra-dense spirit arrow, which far exceeded Kurosaki Meguri's imagination, directly penetrated the baby-shaped head of the Golden Hygia Shojitsu as if there was no hindrance. Moreover, the storm caused by the spirit arrow also followed and tore the fierce baby-shaped head into pieces. And this was just the beginning. It seemed like a moment, but also seemed unusually long, under the gazes of Ishida Sojin, Ishida Rai, Kuronko Yorishi, and the members of the 12th Division. The Golden Hygia Shojitsu that seemed to be able to flatten everything was completely pierced from beginning to end by the spirit arrow. Even after the spirit arrow completely pierced through the Golden Hygia Shojitsu, the bright blue light went straight to Kurosaki Meguri, whose knees were pierced and he fell to the ground helplessly. No way! How is it possible? Captain Kurosaki Meguri. Amid the exclamations, many people seemed to have seen the scene of Kurosaki Meguri being completely pierced by this spirit arrow. Could it be that the captain of the GOTY 13th Division was going to be killed like this? At this moment, suddenly a figure opened his hands to block in front of Kurosaki Meguri, staring directly at the spirit arrow without the slightest fear of death. The figure is slender and plump, but the waist is extremely slender. The shoulder of the death suit she wears is tied with the armband of the 12th Division's adjutant, Nirvana. Looking at this figure, Senju Cheng's mind subconsciously emerges this name, as well as the figure of the little girl who once lay on the ground and seemed to have no idea how to eat. This is an artificial death god created by Kurosaki Meguri using the soul-making technology. Not long after Nirvana was born, Senju Cheng had seen the 3 Nolali who knew nothing, at the time, because Kurosaki Meguri only used Nirvana as an experimental subject for observation and recording the growth process and changes of the artificial death god. Therefore, during Nirvana's childhood, she was almost fed like an alternative captive animal by Kurosaki Meguri, who had no experience in taking care of children. Therefore, under the argument of the Female Death God Association, Nirvana's sound was taken care of by the Female Death God Association for a long time, and Senju Cheng also served as Nirvana's nanny for a while. What Senju Cheng didn't expect was that it only felt like a very short time had passed in Hukou Mundo, but Nirvana had already grown so big. Just as this thought came to Senju Cheng's mind, Senju Cheng, who had no intention of completely killing Kurosaki Meguri here, slightly bent his fingers. The dazzling spirit arrow was like a spent force as it shot towards Nirvana's sound, who was blocking Kurosaki Meguri. Its speed kept slowing down, and finally it turned into a large amount of blue spirit particles and completely dissipated in front of Nirvana's sound. However, the Golden Hikari Jutsu, which was completely pierced by the spirit arrow, was completely destroyed and disintegrated, and finally returned to the form of a zanpakutō in Kurosaki Meguri's hand. Such a crushing result almost made Kurosaki Meguri extremely angry. Asshole, are you insulting me? Senju Cheng then dispersed the spirit bow in his hand. His eyes moved away from Nirvana Onmu's seemingly fully matured body, and fell on Kurosaki Mayuri, who was kneeling powerlessly behind Nirvana Onmu, and said, "Don't think too much, I never have such a boring interest, but I'm a little sorry that it seems to have caused some irreversible damage to your Bankai. I hope it won't affect your qualifications as a captain." These seemingly gentle words were undoubtedly extremely harsh to Kurosaki Mayuri's ears. However, in this body that had been destroyed and the Bankai had been disintegrated, even if Kurosaki Mayuri was extremely angry, he knew that no matter what he said, he would only look more like an incompetent loser. Kurosaki Makatao. Kurosaki Mayuri recited the words word by word, and then shouted at Nirvana Onmu in front of him. "Idiot, what are you still standing there for? Help me up and go back to the Seireitei." "Yes, Lord Mayuri." Nirvana Otonashi, who fully met the so-called three-nose standard, responded respectfully, and directly helped Mayuri up, stepped into the gate of the world first, and soon disappeared in front of Senju Cheng. Angry. The anger of being teased, and treated like a loser. After returning to the Technology Development Bureau, Nirvana Mayuri chose to change into a new body without hesitation. Looking at the zanpakutō in his hand that was permanently damaged by the Bankai, his face was almost distorted to the extreme. "Otonashi, prepare me medicine no. 10, medicine no. 33, medicine no. 98, no matter what, I must make that bastard pay the price," Nirvana Mayuri said with a roar. Facing Nirvana Mayuri's order, Nirvana Otonashi thought for a moment and answered expressionlessly. "Master Mayuri, please calm down. According to my judgment, with the queency named Kurosaki Makatao's ability, those drugs will not have a chance to get close to him for injection during the battle." Bang! The next moment, Kurosaki Mayuri slapped Nirvana to the ground with a backhand slap, and said angrily, "Stupid. Childish. When will you change your naive thoughts? Who stipulated that drugs can only be released during battle?" Then, Kurosaki Mayuri looked down at Nirvana lying on the ground and said, "It doesn't matter what method you use, you just have to get close to that bastard named Kurosaki Makatao and get the drugs into his body, do you understand?" Nirvana sat up, and when he was about to open his mouth to agree, a hell butterfly landed on Nirvana's shoulder. Nirvana conveyed the message of Kurosaki Mayuri without any emotion, and said, "Captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurosaki, please go to the 1st Division to attend the captain's meeting immediately and explain why you released your zanpakutō Bankai in the real world for no reason." Damn it. Upon hearing this, Mayuri Kurosaki became even more angry and impatient, and then he put on the captain's adori that Nirvana had prepared to put aside, and walked towards the 1st Division with Nirvana, whose half-face was a little swollen. "P.S. Please give me a monthly ticket, thank you, please. Chapter 365. Are you not hurt? P.S. In the last chapter, a book friend reminded me that Niyin has another more popular translation named Niyin. The author intends to change it to the more popular Niyin, but due to unknown reasons, the changes failed several times, so the translation name Niyin was still used. Special explanation, the above. The first team, in the captain's meeting room. When Kurosaki Mayuri just arrived, he was surprised to find that this captain's meeting was unexpectedly attended by all, including the usually sick-kitted Joshiro and the often absent Zaraki Kinpachi. And just as Kurosaki Mayuri just joined the team and the door slowly closed, announcing the start of the meeting, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni knocked his cane heavily and asked bluntly, "Captain of the 12th Division, Kurosaki Mayuri, please explain why you went to the human world for no reason and released your zanpakutō Bankai." In an instant, under the gaze of many captains, Kurosaki Mayuri's expression undoubtedly looked a little ugly. Especially since the former captain of the 10th Division, Isshin Shiba, went to the living world without permission a few years ago and then completely disappeared, the Seireitei now undoubtedly attaches great importance to similar matters. Immediately, Mayuri Kurosaki spoke the excuse he had prepared in advance, spreading his hands and said, "Due to the mistakes made by several new Shinigami who joined the Technology Development Bureau, several Achuka's level hollows escaped to the living world, so I hurried to deal with them." This excuse seemed reasonable, but apart from Kinpachi Zaraki, few captains would believe such an outrageous excuse. How could an experimental subject escape from the control so easily after entering the scientist's cage, let alone escape to the living world in groups? Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni slowly widened his eyes, as if his anger was accumulating, and questioned, "Captain Kurosaki Mayuri, please answer directly the targets of the attacks of those hollows in the living world." This sentence was obviously doubting whether Mayuri Kurosaki was secretly manipulating the hollows to attack the Shinigami and eliminate dissidents. Kurosaki Mayuri's expression twitched, but he said it with a straight face. Those hollows only attacked a few queensies. After a pause, Kurosaki Mayuri seemed to be fanning the flames. What I didn't expect was that although the number of queensies in the world had been reduced to an extreme due to unknown reasons not long ago, there were only a few queensies left in Kurakura town, and one of them was terrifyingly strong. Upon hearing this, Zanpakutō seemed to be alert all of a sudden, and asked subconsciously, "Oh? How strong?" "A Yakuke's-level hollow is like a toy in front of that guy," Kurosaki Mayuri said. "What's that guy's name?" Zanpakutō asked hurriedly. Kurosaki Mayuri grinned and said, "Kurosaki Makatao." Immediately, in the captain's meeting room, Komamura Sejin and Jikita Jushiro frowned, and Yunohana Retsu's squinting gentle eyes fixed, slowly looking at Kurosaki Mayuri and asked softly, "It seems that Captain Kurosaki Mayuri has fought with that queensie once, right? What was the result?" As soon as this question, which could be said to hit the nail on the head, was asked, Kurosaki Mayuri's expression froze. Miserable defeat. Not only was his body that he usually used severely damaged in terms of mobility, but even his zanpakutō Bankai was permanently damaged. This result was a great shame for a captain. "It's okay," Kurosaki Mayuri answered vaguely. "Can you describe the detailed process in detail?" Yunohana Retsu asked gently. These questions one after another almost made Kurosaki Mayuri feel as if he was forced to talk about his own mental journey of defending his thesis. Did this guy do it on purpose or accidentally? Kurosaki Mayuri raised his head and glanced at Yunohana Retsu. Although he was extremely unhappy, he did not dare to say a word to Yunohana Retsu. Although Kurosaki Mayuri is not a millennial-level Shinigami, he knows exactly what happened 1,000 years ago, the war between the stern-crossed knights led by Ithwatch and the first-generation captains of the Gotti 13, which naturally included the terrifying terror of Yunohana Retsu. Kurosaki Mayuri answered with gritted teeth. "Kurosaki Makatao is very strong. He defeated my Bankai, so I retreated to the Seireitei." "You're not hurt, are you?" Yunohana Retsu continued to ask. This also made Kurosaki Mayuri stunned, and unexpectedly felt a sense of care. This was undoubtedly an extremely unfamiliar feeling for Kurosaki Mayuri, who had never been understood by other Shinigami and was regarded as a weirdo. In an instant, Kurosaki Mayuri's expression seemed to ease a lot, and he answered, "It's okay, I prepared several spare bodies and directly replaced a new one." Yunohana Retsu nodded slightly, as if relieved, since Kurosaki Mayuri was forced to take the initiative to replace a spare body, and deliberately fanned the flames of the captain's meeting. It was enough to show that Makatao did not suffer any loss. On the contrary, it is very likely that Kurosaki Mayuri himself does not have enough confidence to fight back against Makatao, otherwise Kurosaki Mayuri would not have tried to retaliate against Makatao in this way. At this moment, Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, who seemed to have thought for a moment, asked, "Queensie Makatao Kurosaki, who has specific information about him?" "Ahem, Captain General." Yukita Jushiro raised his hand and stepped out to answer. "I'm relatively clear about this, please allow me to answer." Then, Yukita Jushiro roughly described all the information he knew, emphasizing that Senju Makatao had no intention of persisting in hatred and revenge against the Seireitei, but instead was inclined to make friends with the Seireitei. "Captain Yukita, are you so sure?" Kurosaki Mayuri heard this and sneered in a somewhat sinister manner. "On the contrary, what I see in that queensie is the huge potential to threaten the Seireitei. If we don't kill Makatao Kurosaki now, it may lead to even worse consequences." Komamura Sejin also stood up and refuted. "I agree with Captain Yukita on this point. I have also learned a little bit about Kurosaki Makatao from the many letters we have exchanged. He doesn't seem like the bad guy who would start a war." After a pause, Komamura Sejin asked back. "On the contrary, Captain Kurosaki Mayuri's behavior and word have made me doubt whether Captain Kurosaki Mayuri is deliberately trying to start a war." At this moment, Kurosaki Mayuri's eyes were gloomy, but he also understood that with Komamura Sejin and Yukita Jushiro's statements, the result against Kurosaki Makatao would have no effect. Yukita Jushiro represents the position of the old-fashioned Shinigami, while Komamura Sejin represents the faction that claims to be righteous. Kurosaki Mayuri's influence in the Gotti 13 is simply not enough to overwhelm the other party. Chapter 366 Immortal prepares to jump. At this moment, Senju Cheng, who was thanked by the Ishida family with great gratitude, returned to the flower shop. Unlike Ishida Sojin, who was always worried about the reaction of the Seireitei, Senju Cheng did not worry about this problem at all. Not to mention that Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni, the captain general, was not a war maniac. On the contrary, under Senju Cheng's understanding, Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni in his old age treated everything with unexpected kindness. And Kurosaki Marui's behavior this time was both emotionally and rationally at a disadvantage, and defeating Kurosaki Maru would not rise to the point of provoking the Seireitei and the 13th Division. Of course, what made Senju Cheng so confident was that even if he left the Seireitei, he would not have no influence on the Seireitei. Not to mention the black cat Yorishi who was holding in his arms and stroking the representative of the Shibuin family, Unohana teacher was still in the Seireitei. Senju Cheng believed that with Unohana teacher's ability, he would not allow the situation to be bad. If Mayuri Kurosaki had been targeting him at the captain's meeting, Senju would have to worry about Mayuri Kurosaki and he would have to be more careful when walking at night. Senju knew that Unohana Retsu seemed gentle and reasonable, but in fact, he was dark and protective. One day, Mayuri Kurosaki might accidentally bump his head into Unohana's blade, causing Unohana to be charged with manslaughter, which would be very painful for Unohana. However, when Senju pushed open the door of the flower shop, he was slightly stunned by the scene inside the flower shop. In addition to Synopsis who hurried forward to greet him, the other person in the flower shop was Nyan, who could be called a three-no queen. She had delicate and beautiful facial features, but eyes that seemed to have no emotional fluctuations, and a perfect body proportion that met the requirements of both the combat side and the aesthetic side. In addition, the death suit that Nyan wore was also slightly modified, and the lower body was a short skirt, which made Nyan's particularly outstanding legs stand out even more slender. Then, Senju Cheng asked in confusion, "Why are you here?" Nyan bowed to Senju Cheng in a serious manner and then answered, "Hello, Mr. Kurosaki Cheng. My name is Nyan, and I am the adjutant and assistant of Lord Kurosaki Maru. I am very grateful that you did not kill Lord Kurosaki Maru in the previous battle." Senju Cheng's eyes moved, looking at Nyan, who seemed to have no emotional fluctuations and moved like a puppet, but it was a little difficult to associate her with the former three-no lily. Although Nyan in her childhood was also a three-no lily who knew nothing, it was precisely because she knew nothing that her eyes always flashed with purity and curiosity. Too unlovable. Senju Cheng shook his head and said with some disappointment, then walked straight past Nyan and sat back in his seat in the flower shop, leaving Nyan standing there with confusion in her eyes. Too unlovable? Nyan couldn't understand this sentence, and it seemed that he had heard this comment from somewhere in the distant past. Synopsis, who maintained the appearance of the maid Rem, served Senju Cheng warm flower tea at the right time. Senju Cheng took a sip, and then took out a bottle of Sakura sake from the cabinet and poured a small cup for Kuronko Yoichi. Then, Senju Cheng stroked Kuronko Yoichi's soft and smooth fur with an excellent feel, and looked at Kuronko Yoichi lying on the table drinking, and asked, "Compared to that meaningless thank you came here, there should be something else, right?" After these words came out, Nyan, who had no emotional fluctuations on his face, just felt that his brain was a little stuck. This man is a little too unreasonable. Obviously, when facing a woman who bows to thank you, shouldn't he touch the other person with both hands and help the other person up? Indifferently commented to unlovable, and then asked the purpose from a distance, how should he deal with it? This made Nyan, who had finally formulated this battle plan based on many manuals on sexual contact between men and women, feel a little uneasy. And if the first time ended inexplicably, it would be easier to be suspected if you tried to get the drug on the other person next time, right? But, Lord Kurosaki Maru's orders are absolute. No matter what method you use, you must complete Lord Kurosaki Maru's orders. Just when Nyan didn't know how to answer for a long time, Senju Cheng took a sip of tea and asked, "You didn't come here to repay the favor with your body because you were grateful for that favor?" Nyan was stunned for a moment, and immediately realized that this was an excellent excuse, and quickly responded, "Yes." Huh. No way. In an instant, in addition to Senju Cheng who seemed a little surprised, even Kuronko Yorishi, who was originally squinting his eyes to taste the Sakura sake, looked at Nyan in surprise. "Are you kidding? After all, Kurosaki Maru is the captain of the 12th Division, and Mikuro Otomu is his adjutant. Even if it is to avenge Senju Cheng, this is too much, isn't it? If this matter spread in the Seireitei, Kurosaki Mayuri will become a laughingstock. Kuronko Yoichi thought as he began to look for his camera. Nikuro Otomu responded respectfully to Senju Cheng's doubts. Yes, Mr. Kurosaki Cheng. Aren't you the vice captain? And if so, wouldn't Kurosaki Mayuri, as the captain, have any objections? Senju Cheng confirmed again. No, this is all to repay Mr. Kurosaki Cheng for showing mercy to Lord Kurosaki Mayuri. Nikuro Otomu replied. There is no doubt that Kurosaki Mayuri would not leave a large number of monitoring devices in Nikuro Otomu's body. When this series of conversations were transmitted simultaneously to a secret room in the Technology Development Bureau, Kurosaki Mayuri felt both excited and angry. What made him angry was that a mere Quincy dared to be so rude to his important work. What made him excited and stimulating was that once Nirvana could successfully contact the defenseless Senju Cheng, the medicine prepared for the bastard Quincy would be enough to make him regret being born into this world. Unfortunately, not to mention that in the eyes of Senju Cheng, who has a microscopic perspective of spirit particles, how many medicines with strange spirit particle structures are hidden in Nirvana's body, Senju Cheng can be said to be very clear. Even based on the most basic understanding of Nirvana Mayuri and Nirvana, Senju Cheng also understood that this immortal was obviously ready to jump around and wait for him to fall into the trap. However, okay. Senju Cheng agreed with a gentle and pleasant smile on his face, and then said, "Come with me." Then, Senju Cheng signaled Synopsis to close the door of the shop, and then led Nirvana to his bedroom on the second floor, asking Nirvana to wait in the bedroom for a while. Senju Cheng went directly into the bathroom and closed the bathroom door. Chapter 367. The special use of the artificial body. At this moment, the bathroom was lit, the sound of water was loud, and a figure seemed to be busy doing some manual work. In the bedroom, three no sisters Nguyen sat on the sidelines with a calm face, waiting calmly. In the gap of the bedroom window, a black cat tail carefully poked in, then quickly retracted, replaced by a camera lens placed in this excellent position. Behind that camera was the black cat Yorishi, who was so excited that he licked his paws from time to time. For the extremely curious black cat Yorishi, how could he miss this opportunity? Once the candid photo is successful, the huge profit makes the black cat Yorishi can't help but lift his tail high. At the time, whether it is to threaten Kurosaki Cheng and make him crazy with him in the game of Speed and Furious, or to threaten Kurosaki Mayuri, no, it's better to spread this photo directly throughout the jingling court. I believe Kurosaki Mayuri's expression will definitely be very exciting, right? In addition, Mayuri Kurosaki in the Technology Development Bureau also stared at the images fed back by the monitoring equipment in Nguyen's body, and was ready to violate the ban just issued at any time to go to the real world to catch Senju Cheng. This time, in the somewhat quiet room, it seemed that four excited hearts were being moved at the same time. Dang! Suddenly, the bathroom doors opened again, and the graceful Senju Cheng walked out of it, smiling and saying to Nguyen, "Sorry for the wait." Then, just as Kuronko Yorishi and Mayuri Kurosaki were getting more and more excited, Senju Cheng pulled out a humanoid doll from the bathroom with his backhand, which seemed to be almost the same as the artificial body. The dark purple long hair was tied into a braid and hung behind her, with delicate and beautiful facial features that were faintly majestic. The right eye of the purple eyes had a teardrop mole that seemed to be full of temptation. She was wearing a strange purple kimono and her legs were exposed in black stockings. "What is this?" Nguyen asked doubtfully, and also expressed the thoughts of Kuronko Yorishi and Kurosaki Mayuri, who were hiding in the dark. "Inflatable doll? No, it's a fake body. There's a grocery store owner nearby who can make fake bodies, so I specially asked him to make such a fake body." After a pause, knowing that Kurosaki Mayuri was watching him, Senju Cheng thought of something and acted in a sinister way. "Don't worry, I definitely didn't do anything obscene to this fake body, and I just washed it completely in the bathroom. You can use this fake body with confidence." Kuronko Yorishi, Kurosaki Mayuri. This is completely an attempt to cover up, isn't it? Fake body. Inflatable doll. The technology that originally allowed the god of death to walk in the world more conveniently was actually used for this purpose. "Me? Use this fake body?" Nguyen asked with some reaction. "Of course," Senju Cheng said, as a matter of course. "As a god of death, you're in a spirit state. Normal humans cannot see you. If you don't enter the artificial body, how can you work in the flower shop with your body? Work. Work. Hearing this, Nguyen was completely stunned. However, Senju Cheng would not give Nguyen a chance to regret. He watched Nguyen enter this artificial body with his own eyes, and then spoke. I named this body of the artificial body in. From now on, this name will be your stage name while working in the flower shop. When he heard this, Kurosaki Mayuri was completely numb. More importantly, there seemed to be some special technology in the artificial body. After Nguyen entered the artificial body, a large number of monitoring instruments seemed to have failed, and the occasional sound that could be heard was also intermittent. Bang! With a distorted face, Kurosaki Mayuri punched the dashboard hard, and his mind quickly filtered one figure after another, and finally locked onto a lazy and hateful face that seemed to be sloppy. Uehara Kisuke. It must be you, bastard, right? Only you who have escaped the human world have the technology to create a cyborg at this level. Damn it, could it be that the spiritual pressure concealed by the ghost barrier was discovered before, and my Bankai was directly defeated by the spirit arrow along the weak point? Yes, it must be Uehara Kisuke, you bastard. As Kurosaki Mayuri said this, he looked down at the damaged zanpakutō in his hand, and there was a clear data analyzed by various instruments next to it. The spirit arrow that defeated the golden Hikari Jutsu was not as powerful as imagined. The reason why it could cause such an amazing effect was more because it penetrated along some defective weaknesses in the structure of the golden Hikari Jutsu. And as far as Kurosaki Mayuri knew, the only one who could do all this and clearly knew the weakness of the golden Hikari Jutsu was Uehara Kisuke. At the same time, in Uehara Kisuke's eyes, the Black Cat Yorishi had not returned home for several months. Tonight, he returned to the grocery store in shock, and grabbed Uehara Kisuke, who was already asleep, and slapped him with his two claws, knocking him unconscious. Uehara Kisuke. On the edge of half asleep and half awake, Uehara Kisuke felt that he was a little confused by the two claws of the Black Cat Yoichi, and asked subconsciously. Yoichi, what's wrong? The Black Cat Yoichi's golden pupils showed a look like looking at garbage, looking at Uehara Kisuke with disdain, and then asked. What's wrong? Did you make a prosthetic body for Kurosaki Makoto before? Uehara Kisuke recalled for a while and answered blankly. Yes, I didn't want to agree at first, but Kurosaki Makoto is worthy at being a famous flower arrangement artist in Karakura town. He is really rich and gave too much. At the end, Uehara Kisuke couldn't help feeling a little happy, and then seemed to think of something and asked. Is Kurosaki Makoto going to create a new artificial body again? No problem, but the price may be. Before Uehara Kisuke could finish, the Black Cat Yorishi slapped him with his claws again, and jumped to the windowsill in a flash, and said with a look of disgust in his eyes. Kisuke, you are too despicable. The technology that the Shiwuin family funded you to research was developed by you for this purpose, and you even sold it to people in the world. This is extremely bad behavior and unforgivable. As the voice of the Black Cat Yorishi fell, the graceful Black Cat shadow instantly disappeared in front of Uehara Kisuke. Uehara Kisuke was left alone, covering his face with several bloodstains with one hand, and muttering with a messy and confused expression. What happened? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 368. Imperfect Artificial Soul Technology. The artificial body, without a doubt, was indeed made by Makoto Senju, who asked Uehara Kisuke for a custom-made body. However, after the artificial body that looked very similar to the shadow was handed over to Makoto Senju, he completely transformed it, turning it into a device doll similar to the REM doll. Of course, Makoto Senju was not thinking that he was tired of the REM doll and planned to let Synopsis replace the shadow doll openly. Makoto Senju was just thinking of being prepared for any eventuality, fearing that the REM doll would break down, so that Synopsis could replace it with a new device body in time. However, under the right circumstances, Makoto Senju did not mind temporarily giving the shadow doll to Ninomyu for use. After all, Ninomyu, who seemed to have no idea of what emotions were, was in a sense quite in line with the image of the shadow doll itself. As for the REM doll, if it broke down, Makoto Senju, as the creator, could easily repair it with a little effort. The next day, As the flower shop reopened, Synopsis was busy as usual, while Senju Cheng taught Nian, a new employee of the flower shop, some skills that he must master. No, Yin, your posture is not right. If you do this, you will easily hurt the delicate flowers. Come on, relax with this gesture, I will help you adjust it. Ah, yes, you are very perceptive, you're awesome. It must be said that as an artificial death god, Nian, in comparison, seems to have no too many emotions and lacks common sense in dealing with some unfamiliar things, but his IQ is beyond doubt. Therefore, after Senju Cheng's hand-in-hand teaching for half a day, Nian has understood most of what he should do when working in a flower shop, and has also remembered the types and names of quite a few flowers. Before he knew it, it was already noon. Senju Cheng looked at the time and asked, Yin, can you cook? Go cook. Nian was stunned and spoke slowly. Can I prepare the nutrient solution? Senju Cheng. As expected of the adjutant of the Frankenstein of Seireitei, Kurosaki Mayuri, has he developed some unnecessary understanding of cooking? Sure enough, one should not have unnecessary expectations of Ninomyu in certain matters. As Senju Makotao cast his eyes on Synopsis, who seemed to be eavesdropping on the conversation intentionally or unintentionally, Synopsis's eyes almost instinctively revealed expectation and pride. That's right, master, unlike a stupid servant of the god of death, I'm omnipotent. At this moment, Synopsis, who had been secretly shut up for half a day, seemed to be waiting for the call of mission. Rem, then I'll leave the cooking to you. Senju Makotao said. Yes. Synopsis handed the broom in his hand to Ninomyu, and his little hand slightly pressed down the maid's skirt, performing a perfect maid etiquette, and then walked up to the kitchen on the second floor of the flower shop. After a pause, Senju Makotao turned to Ninomyu and said, As for Yin, then you should be responsible for entertaining guests and work hard. There is a question. Nian, holding the broom in both hands, thought about something and asked, How long do I need to work? Senju Makotao said with a philanthropist's smile. That depends on how precious Kurosaki Mayuri's life is in your mind. How long do you think it can be offset? Of course, I'm a very democratic and kind-hearted store manager. When you think you can leave, you can return to Jingliang at any time. Nian seemed to be stunned and fell into a period of thinking when he heard this. The black cat Yoichi, who was lying in the cat's nest, couldn't help rolling his eyes and secretly spit on Senju Makotao's cunning answer. Based on Kuronko Yoichi's understanding of Kurosaki Mayuri undoubtedly set himself as a person that Nian must not disobey, and is absolutely and the only important person. In this way, this is a dead-end problem. Unless Mayuri Kurosaki personally gives orders to Nianmu will probably have to work in this flower shop for the rest of his life. However, what Kuronko Yoichi didn't know was that after Mayuri Kurosaki realized that something was not right, he had long wanted to recall Nianmu, an important work, to the Seireitei. However, after Nianmu entered the puppet of the shadow, it seemed that his own spiritual power and spiritual pressure were not restricted at all, but he passively isolated all the information from the Soul Society. Moreover, Senju Makotao had been busy in the bathroom for so long before, so it was impossible for him to really wash the puppet of the shadow a little bit, but he had made some modifications to the puppet of the shadow. Artificial Shinigami, to be more precise, is the taboo artificial soul technology. Mayuri Kurosaki did not completely complete this technology. Nianmu was just a prototype with various defects. She did not have a zanpakutō, did not have too many emotions, and her own spirit body was also transformed, not formed like a normal Shinigami. Compared to the Jumara that is produced in batches on the assembly line of the Seireitei, the biggest breakthrough of Nirvana is that it has the ability to grow, and can grow up normally from the childhood form like a normal soul. However, Senju Makotao looked at Nirvana's eyes that still did not have much emotion compared to his childhood when Nirvana's shadow puppet reacted to it, and he couldn't help but sigh secretly. Perhaps, in the eyes of Kurosaki Mayuri, Nirvana's sound is a prototype of a very valuable experimental result. However, whether it is a former member of the Female Death God Association or Senju Makotao who served as Nirvana's nanny for a period of time, he regards Nirvana's sound as a real life. Therefore, Senju Makotao may also want to get a little involved and improve the technology of artificial soul, or simply want Nirvana's sound to have more emotions, so that her life based on the experiment will have more meaning. The modified shadow puppet can allow Senju Makotao to intuitively monitor the state of Nirvana's soul, so that Senju Makotao can understand the artificial soul technology that has not been completely completed by Kurosaki Mayuri. In addition, the shadow puppets are completely isolated from all information from Soul Society, making it inevitable for 9 to be disturbed by Kurosaki Mayuri. Do your job well, Makoto. Senju supported his chin with one hand, looking at the shadow puppet with a slightly gentle smile. However, Yori Shikoronko followed Makoto Senju's line of sight and undoubtedly felt that Makoto Senju was staring at the shadow puppet's slender and round black silk legs. While Yori Shikoronko was disdainful of such behavior, he was a little confused. Strange, Kurosaki Makoto has obviously seen my real body, and my legs are not stronger than this artificial body. But he has never shown such an expression. Could it be that the thing called black silk in the real world has a different attraction to Kurosaki Makoto? Chapter 369. Everything is for Mayuri-sama. Of course, even though Nyan was taught by Senju Makoto through his pure and beautiful language art, it seemed that it was natural for him to become a flower shop employee. However, Nyan naturally did not forget Kurosaki Mayuri's order, do everything possible to drug Kurosaki Makoto. Therefore, Nyan worked diligently during the day, and tried to sneak into Senju Makoto's bedroom at night when it was quiet. The dark room did not cause any trouble to Nyan, an artificial soul with a photographic memory. He touched the position of the bed according to the room layout he remembered before. Faintly, Nyan could even hear the steady and long breathing of Senju Makoto when he was sleeping. Nyan's eyes, which were free of emotion, turned and looked at the vague human outline on the bed, and his palm slowly touched it. Everything is for the order of Lord Kurosaki Mayuri. The next moment, Nyan suddenly felt his wrist being grabbed. Then, the bedside lamp was turned on, and Kaian Ching's gentle smile appeared in front of Nyan, asking without any defense, Yin, why are you here? Nyan was stunned, and didn't know how to explain it. Kaian Ching seemed to have thought of something and asked with concern. Is there something you don't understand during the day? Or are you not used to the artificial body and need to adjust it? Yes, Nyan answered subconsciously. Come, let me give you a little lesson, and then repair the artificial body, Kaian Ching said, while pulling out all kinds of strange tools that seemed to have been prepared in advance in the drawer of the bedside table. After a long time, when Nyan still had that 3-0 expression and left Kaian Ching's bedroom, his hands unconsciously supported the wall, and his feet seemed to be soft and unable to support his body. 1. Everything is for Lord Kurosaki Mayuri's order. As Nyan muttered in a low voice, the voice of Senju Makoto in the bedroom came out and said, King, by the way, help close the door. Yes, Manager Kurosaki. Bang. As Nyan closed the door obediently, Senju Makoto couldn't help but show a little smile on his face, and then turned off the bedside lamp and continued to sleep. The next time seemed to become more regular. The flower shop had an extra clerk, which not only did not affect the business of the flower shop, but the charm of the shadow doll undoubtedly made the flower shop more popular in Karakura town. While Nyan faithfully fulfilled his part-time job duties, he also never forgot to sneak attack Senju Makoto and drug him. However, after each sneak attack by Nyan failed, it happened to give Senju Makoto enough excuses to conduct an in-depth examination of Nyan's body and soul. As for Kurosaki Mayuri in the Technology Development Bureau, he was undoubtedly itching with hatred for all this. Sending Nirvana on mute to drug Senju Makoto was undoubtedly done by Kurosaki without the knowledge of Seireitei. In addition, Kurosaki Mayuri knew that he was no match for Senju Makoto in person, and that Uehara Kisuke, that bastard, was suspected to be hiding behind Senju Makoto. Kurosaki Mayuri repeatedly passed on orders to Nirvana on mute, but there was no response at all, which further strengthened Kurosaki Mayuri's guess that all this was done by Uehara Kisuke hiding behind the scenes. This made Kurosaki Mayuri only occasionally listen to the intermittent conversations and groans of pain from Nirvana on mute every day, but apart from listening, he was in an awkward situation where he could do nothing. Uehara Kisuke. You bastard, I will never forgive you, but, Uehara Kisuke, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Even if you really break the Nirvana, or even take it apart, don't even think about peeking at my artificial soul technology, it's useless. Even if you use these little tricks behind my back, it can't change the fact that sooner or later I will surpass you at my artificial soul technology. Uehara Grocery Store. Uehara Kisuke sneezed inexplicably as if he had a cold. The next moment, the burly, muscular Walentess instantly appeared beside the rather slender Uehara Kisuke, holding hot water in one hand and cold medicine in the other, and said with concern, Manager, the weather is getting colder, could it be that the artificial body has caught a cold? Take some medicine and take care of yourself. It's okay, Uehara Kisuke rubbed his itchy nose, smacked his lips, and said, Maybe Orishi scolded me behind my back, so I sneezed. Urahara Kisuke said after a pause, scratching his messy hair. But what happened to Orishi last time? He came back in the middle of the night and beat me up, and also scolded me in some very unpleasant words. I was half asleep and didn't have time to hear it clearly. It seems to be related to the artificial body. The glasses on Wallentesa's face reflected some light, and he moved closer to Urahara Kisuke and said with concern. Maybe, it's also a reminder for the manager to take more care of his health. It's also troublesome if the artificial body is broken. Come on, manager, take the medicine first. It may be, Urahara Kisuke said subconsciously, then took the medicine and hot water from Wallentesa and drank it. Thank you, Tess. Wallentesa, who looked honest and simple, lowered his head slightly, pushed his glasses, and answered. You're welcome, manager. It's my duty to take care of you. As the weather turned cooler, snowflakes fell from Kurakura town from time to time. The heating was turned on in the flower shop, and Kuronko Yorishi almost naturally got into Senju Makoto's arms to keep warm. Senju Makoto carefully appreciated the flower language letters that Unohana teacher had recently sent. In order to prevent others from noticing that the flower language contained special information in the inconspicuous flower arrangement works, the information contained in each flower language letter was quite short, and it also needed to be understood through complex interpretation and combined with the current situation. No movement from the 12th Division. It has been several months since Nikwonu started working in the flower shop, which surprised Senju Makoto. Nikwonu Mayuri seemed to have concealed the fact that Nikwonu, as his adjutant, was forced to repay his debt in the flower shop, and there was no movement against him. Instead, he was researching something in the Technology Development Bureau every day. No, is he researching something against me? Senju Makoto secretly guessed, but did not take it too seriously. As a being who controls the spiritual particles, Senju Makoto cannot directly interfere with the spiritual particles that make up other people's spirit bodies, and will be hurt if his defensor is broken by his zanpakutō. However, Senju Makoto can perfectly control the technological items or medicines, and can easily control that part of the spiritual particles. Chapter 370. The so-called upper limit. Unless Mayuri Kurosachi disassembles part of his soul and integrates it into those technological products, so that those technological products also become part of the name of Mayuri Kurosachi in definition. Otherwise, before Mayuri Kurosachi knows this secret, no matter what targeted research Mayuri Kurosachi conducts, it will have no substantial meaning to Makoto Senju. While Makoto Senju was thinking, a customer came to the flower shop that surprised Makoto Senju. Ishidarai. Moreover, Ishidarai didn't seem to come to buy flowers. He got rid of Synopsis and went straight to Makoto Senju, who was sipping tea and admiring flowers. Uncle Kurosaki, Ishidarai bowed respectfully and greeted him. Makoto Senju asked gently while motioning Ishidarai to sit down. Is there something? Ishidarai, who looked extremely delicate, gritted his teeth and leaned over to ask Makoto Senju. I have an unwelcome request, please agree to it, Uncle Kurosaki. Senju Makoto paused, looked at Ishidarai so solemnly, put down the teacup, and asked. What is the request? Did something happen to Longxian? Or your mother? No, it has nothing to do with them. Ishidarai raised his head, looked at Senju Makoto seriously, and said. I have been thinking about everything that Uncle Kurosaki said for the past few months, and studying how to. It seems that because of being too excited, Ishidarai, who originally looked quite delicate, seemed to have a paler face, and there was a layer of black in his eye sockets. The whole person seemed to have been overdrawn in the past few months. It's just that I can't do it. I can't do it like Uncle Kurosaki, I can't. Ishidarai's hands that supported his body unconsciously clenched into fists, but his eyes unconsciously turned red, as if he was angry and desperate about his own powerlessness. At this moment, Ishidarai suddenly felt a warm palm on his shoulder, and Senju Makoto's gentle voice sounded. You are still young, why rush to deny yourself? Even if you are born with deficiencies, you may change them if you work hard. The voice like the spring breeze undoubtedly made Ishidarai, who has been practicing for more than a month in the cold winter, feel full of warmth in his heart. Compared with his father Ishidarai, who was ruthless, strict and always denied him, Senju Makoto in front of him made Ishidarai feel the love of his father. In fact, Ishidarai didn't know how he wandered to the door of Kurosaki flower shop, and then walked in a rush, for several months. Since Ishidarai witnessed Senju Makoto's crushing of the hollows and the captain-level Shinigami a few months ago, Ishidarai deeply realized his weakness and shortcomings. whether it was out of yearning for the power of the Queency or to protect his grandfather Ishida Sochin and other family members. Ishida has been practicing almost crazily in the past few months. However, what hit Ishida so hard was that he seemed to be unable to touch the level of power displayed by Senju Cheng. Faster, more powerful, Ishida could not do these things at all. The only thing that made Ishida more and more aware was his own weakness. Too weak. Thinking that being recognized by grandfather as a qualified Queency was enough, what a mockery, and how ridiculous. This was just grandfather comforting himself and encouraging himself. At this moment, in Senju Cheng's eyes, Ishida seemed to be a little vegetable that had just walked out of a greenhouse, but was hit hard by a blizzard and was almost wilted. Senju Cheng had already guessed most of Ishida's intentions. Immediately, Senju Cheng spoke gently. Rai, you may try to communicate with your father. Your father may not have told you, but he is also a very powerful Queency. Ishida looked up at Senju Cheng and asked. Is he stronger than Uncle Kurosaki? This, Senju Cheng hesitated for a moment, but still said with a bit of humility. Maybe I am a little bit stronger. Suddenly, Ishida's eyes seemed to glow, and he said. Uncle Kurosaki, please teach me, I can do anything. I want to be a real Queency. Looking at the pale and delicate Ishida in front of him, Senju Cheng hesitated for a moment and said. You can do anything. That's right. Ishida answered firmly. Okay then, Senju Cheng stood up, picked up the white coat hanging on the side and put it on himself, then took Ishida and Nirien out of the flower shop and headed towards the deserted suburban woods. The snow seemed to be falling more and more, this also added a different artistic conception and scenery to the suburban woods. Rick, first of all, I need to tell you something. Perhaps because I accepted the Queency inheritance of the Kurosaki family halfway through, my thinking is different from that of the traditional Queency, and so is my training. Senju Cheng said in a gentle tone with a bit of seriousness. Yes, teacher. Ishida replied seriously. Perhaps because of Senju Cheng's attitude towards his teacher, the title of teacher by Ishida made Senju Cheng feel something was wrong, and he corrected it immediately. You don't have to call me teacher. I'm just teaching you a few tricks. Ishida, who was barely a teenager in actual age, asked naively. Then what should I call you? Just continue to call me uncle. Senju Cheng replied disapprovingly, and then continued. Among them, I won't repeat the concept that the battle of the traditional Queency is the intake and use of spirit particles. I believe that Mr. Ishida should have told you, right? Yes. Ishida. Then, do you know exactly what the talent difference is between a pure-blood Queency and a half-blood Queency? Without waiting for Ishida to think, Senju Cheng said directly. In addition to the fighting skills such as the stasis blood suit that only pure-blood Queency can use, the biggest difference lies in the amount of spirit particles absorbed. This amount is often the talent difference of Queency in the popular concept. That is why Raichen may think that you are not suitable to be a Queency, because even if you use the spirit particles you absorb in an extremely delicate and gorgeous way, the amount you absorb has already limited the real upper limit. Hearing this, Ishida's face almost visibly dimmed. But, Chapter 371 Yulong's Cultivation Direction. But, Senju Cheng raised his lips slightly and smiled gently. This problem is not absolutely unsolvable. Uncle Kurosaki, how to solve it? Ishida's eyes reappeared with light, and he asked excitedly. Here, I have to mention again that in my opinion, the concept of Queency is a bowman, and the spirit bow and spirit arrow are the most basic fighting means of the Queency. Senju Cheng said this, raised a finger and said. Among them, the spirit density contained in the spirit arrow is like the spiritual pressure strength of the god of death, representing the upper limit of destructive power and penetration. After a pause, Senju Cheng gave an example. And the spirit arrow you fired before could not break through the surface defense of the hollow, precisely because the density of the spirit arrow was too low, just like a ball of cotton hitting steel. This statement also made Ishida's expression look a little embarrassed. However, Senju Cheng did not pay attention, but spoke directly. In addition to this, the spirit bow is formed by the spirit power of the Queency itself and the Queency tools that can stabilize the shape of the spirit bow. Combined with the Queency's own skills in using it, it constitutes the fighting means of most Queencies, right? Yes. Ishida responded subconsciously. Then you still don't understand how to make up for the disadvantages of being a half-blood Queency? Senju Cheng asked back. Seireitei widened his eyes, and a flash of inspiration seemed to flash through his mind. The spirit bow and fighting skills can all be made up by external objects or training. The real difference in talent between Quincy bloodliness is undoubtedly concentrated in the formation of spirit arrows. The amount of spirit particles absorbed represents the upper limit of the destructive power and penetration that the Quincy can exert. The next moment, under the gaze of Seireitei, a spirit arrow quickly formed between the two index fingers that Senju Cheng stretched out, and the blue light was contained and brilliant. Even Seireitei could clearly judge that even if he put all his strength into condensing the spirit arrow, it was far from being able to match 1/10 of the strength of the spirit arrow in Senju Cheng's hand. What shocked Seireitei even more was that Senju Cheng actually threw the spirit arrow towards Seireitei. Seireitei hurriedly caught the spirit arrow in a panic, and before he could observe it carefully from a close distance, the spirit arrow quickly shrank and finally formed a shape similar to the size of a crystal-clear crystal cigarette. More importantly, it was very stable. Very stable. It was like a real object. This, Uncle Kurosaki, this is, Seireitei, who had already thought of a possibility, asked with some stammering. Yes, that's right. This is a little trick I developed. It's different from the spirit arrows that the Quincy normally condenses. Even if this spirit arrow is separated from my continuous spirit replenishment, it can still maintain a stable state for a long time. At this point, Senju Cheng gestured and said, try to destroy the outer shell of the spirit arrow in your hand through the spirit intake method, and then release it in a normal way. Yes, Seireitei responded, but his trembling hands were enough to prove his excitement. Then, according to the method Senju Cheng said, Seireitei touched the spirit arrow in his hand with the spirit intake method of the Quincy. The next moment, the spirit arrow the size of a cigarette quickly returned to its normal length, and it emitted an inherent and brilliant blue spirit light, implicitly showing the amazing spirit density in it. Then, Seireitei formed his own spirit bow and quickly put the spirit arrow in his hand on it. With his eyes closed, he took a deep breath. Seireitei opened his eyes again and shot the spirit arrow in his hand in a textbook-like way. Swoosh! The speed was not fast, but, boom. After the spirit arrow hit the hardest mounting, it suddenly exploded, and the huge shockwave caused almost blew Seireitei off the ground with his eyes wide open. It was only because Senju Cheng put one hand on Seireitei's shoulder in time that Seireitei didn't look too embarrassed. As the smoke slowly dissipated a little, what appeared in front of Seireitei was a mountain with a small half missing. This kind of power that Seireitei had never imagined in the past made Seireitei mutter as if he was in a dream. I did it. So amazing, so amazing. Senju Cheng stroked his chin and judged in a calm tone. If it was against an ordinary Cheng-ge's, it would be almost over if a Cheng-ge's body was hit without any defense. However, this degree was also within Senju Cheng's expectations. After all, it was just a casually condensed spirit arrow to prove some theories to Seireitei, so as to persuade Seireitei to practice along the path he designed. Quincy, an ancient profession that can be compared with the Shinigami. However, in Senju Cheng's opinion, Quincy has a certain degree of advantage over Shinigami. Shinigami have a shallow strike in their hand to assist Shinigami in awakening their own zanpakutō, but in the end, the upper limit of Shinigami's combat power is still completely limited by themselves. Quincy is different. There is no hard and fast rule. A Quincy can only use the spirit arrows they condense. However, normal Quincy can't condense spirit arrows that can be stable for a long time out of the body like Senju Cheng, so even if someone has this idea, it is impossible to achieve it. However, this is not a difficult task for Senju Cheng, who controls the name of spiritual. As for the effect, Senju Cheng looked at Seireitei's excited and respectful eyes and knew that it was almost done. Right, so now you understand, right? The only thing that can limit you as a Quincy is the spirit arrow itself. For this, I can provide you with stable and high-intensity spirit arrows. But how to exert the power of these spirit arrows still depends on you. This is also that direction of your next practice. Seireitei's previous defeatance and depression were swept away, and he asked with vigor and passion. I understand, Uncle Kurosaki, how should I practice next? First of all, if you believe me, then abandon those fancy things, especially the fighting method of releasing a large number of spirit arrows in one breath to scrape the enemy. Why does it exist? Senju Cheng seemed to be puzzled, and then said. Since the problem can be solved with one arrow, why do you need to shoot more times? Therefore, in addition to the failing kick, the most important thing that Quincy needs to practice is undoubtedly arm strength. Chapter 372. The plot begins. Ishidarai can understand Feilin Jiao. As a special combat movement skill of the Quincy, Feilin Jiao is undoubtedly very important to the Quincy. But, arm strength. Generally speaking, isn't it that only the Shinigami who are proficient in close combat or kendo will deliberately focus on training arm strength? For that Quincy, the arm strength required to operate the spirit bow is actually not much. However, in Ishidarai's eyes at this moment, Senju Makoto is undoubtedly correct, and he is more trustworthy than his own father Ishidaraichen. Uncle Kurosaki, just tell me how to practice. I will definitely do my best to meet your requirements and let Uncle Kurosaki recognize that I have the qualifications to use that kind of spirit arrow. Ishidarai said with extraordinary determination. In that case, Senju Makoto took out 2 black bracelets from his arms, and then put them on Ishidarai's wrists, saying, "The effect of this bracelet can help you improve your arm strength to a certain extent. From now on, you cannot take it off without my permission until you complete your training. Is that okay?" "Yes." Ishidarai nodded in response, but he did not feel any strangeness or discomfort in his arms after wearing the bracelet. As for the content of your training, it is very simple. To defeat the shadow, Senju Makoto moved a few steps to the side, revealing Nirvana behind him, whose face seemed to have no extra expression. To be more precise, it was Nirvana who was using the shadow doll, but now Nirvana was hiding in the shadow doll, and Ishidarai had no idea that the person in front of him was the god of death. The fine snow seemed to be falling more and more densely. In the snow forest that was almost a white snow forest, the figure and charm of the shadow doll seemed to stand out more and more, making the young Ishidarai seem to be slightly stunned. Ahem, Senju Makoto coughed lightly, waking up Ishidarai, and added, "Of course, in the early stage, it is better for you to try to survive in the hands of the shadow. You can't use the spirit arrow, but you can use the spirit bow to block." Then, Senju Makoto stepped back a few steps, making room for Nirvana and Ishidarai. The next moment, Nirvana rushed straight towards Ishidarai, and a clean and neat whip kick hit Ishidarai's side, who failed to react in time. Bang! There is no doubt that the little vegetable Ishidarai was beaten on the spot and rolled several times on the snow. Unlike normal Shinigami, Nirvana may not have a zanpakutō as an artificial Shinigami, but Nirvana's level of white fighting is still quite outstanding. Even though Nirvana is using a shadow puppet now, the strength he exerts still directly crushes Ishidarai. Bang 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 bang! Soon, a battle that can be called a one-sided crushing began in front of Senju Makoto. However, Ishidarai was much more resilient than Makoto Senju had imagined. He held on a little longer than originally expected, and finally fainted from exhaustion. The human body is undoubtedly weak. Even though Ishidarai is a Quincy, his body is still fragile without the stilled blood suit unique to pure-blooded Quincy for defensa. The reason why Makoto Senju asked Ishidarai to undergo this strange training was to try to fundamentally improve Ishidarai's human body. The pair of bracelets was composed of the instruments controlled by Makoto Senju. In addition to detecting changes in Ishidarai's body, it can also strengthen the fragile parts of Ishidarai's body during the battle, and gradually integrate and strengthen the parts that exert force in each battle. More importantly, Quincy is also one of the few groups in the current human group that can freely use the power of spirit particles in the body of the instrument. Therefore, Makoto Senju also intends to study the combination of spirit particles and instruments in this way. As for the fact that there is no effect yet, Senju Makoto is more of a try-it-out attitude, but in any case, this kind of practice is beneficial to Ishidarai as a Quincy. Thinking of this, Senju Makoto signaled Nirvana to carry Ishidarai on his back, and then returned to the direction of the flower shop, thinking about how to convince Ishidaraichen that he needs to borrow his son. Although Ishidaraichen was quite indifferent and harsh to Ishidarai, in fact, Senju Makoto knew very well that Ishidaraichen still valued Ishidarai very much. What Senju Makoto was worried about was that this kind of practice accidentally turned Ishidarai into a muscular man, and whether Ishidaraichen would have the idea of opening another trumpet. And the fact was just as Senju Makoto expected. Ishidaraichen did not approve of Senju Makoto's weird practice, thinking that it was just a waste of time. With Ishidarai's talent, it would be meaningless even if he took shortcuts. However, out of trust in Senju Makoto, Ishidaraichen had no intention of stopping him. He thought that even if Senju Makoto played with his son, it would be a way to repay Senju Makoto's long-standing kindness to the Ishida family. Since then, Ishidarai's real hellish queency training has begun. Unlike the elegant bow and arrow training shown by his grandfather Ishida Sojin, Ishidarai's daily training is nothing but physical combat, and physical combat in the end. It's just as beautiful as the name. Exercise arm strength. If it weren't for the glimmer of hope supporting Ishidarai would have given up long ago. As for Nirvana Onmyu, in addition to being the one who beats Ishidarai, the sandbag, he is responsible for receiving all kinds of people who come to the flower shop every day. Buying flowers, most of them are either very happy or very sad. It's different from the rigid and depressing atmosphere in the Seireitei, and there is no Kurosachi Mayuri who almost always orders the daily schedule and tasks. Under Senju Makoto's observation, Nying's eyes seemed to no longer be as agitated as they were in the past. Life seemed to have calmed down in another way. Karakura town seemed to have returned to its past tranquility. Except for the frequent hollows being secretly dealt with by the Shinigami, the operation of the city seemed to be an ordinary city. Until, in the dark night, under the bright moon, under the guidance of the Hell Butterfly, an onion-headed girl Shinigami came from Soul Society to take over the mission of her predecessor. Her petite body stood on a telephone pole, looking down at Karakura town shrouded in the night below, and murmured, "Is this where I need to stay next?" This scene was seen by Aizen Sasuke, who was monitoring in the Seireitei, and also fell into the eyes of Senju Makoto, who was lying in the bedroom flipping through the latest illustration magazine and looking out the window. Chapter 373A. Long-awaited reunion. Rukia Kachaki. Makoto Senju's mind flashed back to the time when Rukia Kachaki was studying at the Mao Spiritual Academy, and then compared it with the young Shinigami standing on the telephone pole outside the window. She hasn't grown up at all, in every sense. Makoto Senju laughed dumbly, got up from the bed, walked to the window, opened it, and looked at Rukia Kachaki standing on the telephone pole about 5 meters away. After Rukia Kachaki glanced at Makoto Senju, she seemed to be surprised by Makoto Senju's handsome appearance, and couldn't help but take another look. Then, Rukia Kachaki couldn't move her eyes away. This guy is so handsome, and he is almost the same as brother Byakuya. No, he seems to be a little better. Rukia Kachaki thought about it, or maybe she thought Makoto Senju couldn't see her at all, and she actually moved her feet and landed by Makoto Senju's window, squatting by the window and looking at Makoto Senju closely. Rukia Kachaki's slightly indecent action and posture made Makoto Senju take out a camera and point it at her. Click. This was extremely abrupt in the night, making Rukia Kachaki stunned for a moment, and then she suddenly reacted, pointing her finger at herself and exclaimed, "Can you see me?" Makoto Senju said unhappily about Rukia Kachaki's occasional innocent character. "You can't see me, unless you run naked on the street for a few laps, and then I take a few sets of photos for you and send them to the Kachaki family to ask for money, then you can see it." Running naked. Photos. Kachaki family. As soon as these words came out, Rukia Kachaki's face almost flushed on the spot. The next moment, Rukia Kachaki, who was ashamed and angry, stepped back, posed as if she was drawing a sword, and shouted, "Who are you? Who am I?" Makoto Senju raised his eyebrows slightly and asked back, "Didn't Yukita Joshiro tell you my information before you came to Karakura?" As soon as these words came out, Rukia Kachaki immediately remembered a name and blurted it out. Kurosaki Makoto. In the Seireitei, the name Kurosaki Makoto is not very well known. However, a few years ago, it was said that the captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurosachi, suffered a great loss at the hands of a living queency. This was undoubtedly a popular event, which also made some of the Shinigami remember the name Kurosaki Makoto. Of course, the reason why Rukia Kachaki knew this name was because her captain Yukita Joshiro specifically told her before leaving that she should say hello to Kurosaki Makoto, a friend she had never met, after arriving in Karakura, and that she could ask Kurosaki Makoto for help if she encountered an enemy that was difficult to deal with. However, after realizing that the person in front of her was Kurosaki Makoto, a friend of her and Captain Yukita Joshiro, her face was red and almost dripping blood. Squatting in front of an elder to admire his appearance, and then being photographed by the elder with a camera, what's the difference between this and shitting in the street? Social death. At this moment, Rukia Kachaki, who had just resisted Karakura town and was about to fulfill her duty as a god of death and prove herself to Captain Yukita Joshiro and her brother Kachaki Byakuya, felt a sense of social death that she wanted to escape back to Seireitei. That, Rukia Kachaki blushed and hesitated for a long time, then bent down and bowed. "Captain Yukita, let me take him to say hello." Makoto Senju played with the camera in his hand, propped his chin on the window with one hand, looked at Rukia Kachiki with a smile, and responded lightly. Yeah. In an instant, Makoto Senju's playful attitude almost drove Rukia Kachiki crazy, and her toes were hooked on the window, wishing she could dig out a new house. That Kurosaki-senpai, can you delete the photos? Rukia Kachiki asked weakly. Seeing Rukia Kachiki again after a long absence, Makoto Senju, who was in a good mood, asked jokingly, why? Why? Do you still need to ask why? Rukia Kachiki was already gritting her teeth, with veins on her forehead constantly jumping. She frantically put various prefixes on Makoto Senju's head, but still tried to put on a smile and said, I'm really sorry to disturb Kurosaki-senpai. I'm willing to apologize and hope that Kurosaki-senpai can delete that photo. Photo? What photo? Makoto Senju said with a smile, and then turned the camera in his hand to Rukia Kachiki. The photo displayed on the camera was a night scene, but there was no Rukia in the spirit state. Suddenly, Rukia Kachiki's expression froze. Makoto Senju said with a smile. Rukia, the first lesson in the real world is to distinguish the difference between soul society and the real world, and don't stand in a conspicuous place casually. After all, some humans with spiritual power may be perverts. They may pretend that they can't see anything and secretly stand below to peek at panties. Kachiki Rukia blushed, and her figure disappeared almost instantly, leaving only a gnashing of teeth. Pervert. This made Senju Makoto's expression a little innocent. He was kind enough to remind Kachiki Rukia. If it weren't for the past, Senju Makoto would not bother to remind these new Shinigami stationed in the real world to pay attention to things. As for peeking at Kachiki Rukia, Senju Makoto obviously would not have the slightest interest. After all, not to mention that decades have passed, Kachiki Rukia has hardly grown up. More importantly, Senju Makoto often took care of Kachiki Rukia when she was a baby. Senju Makoto is not really a pervert, and ethics are still very important. Except for teachers. But, Makoto Senju played with the camera in his hand, thinking secretly. Rukia's stationing in Karakura town means that the plot in the original track is about to begin. Yes, judging from the ages of Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida, it is about this period. Aizen, Ithwatch, Ichigo Hyoshiwabu. The next moment, from a perspective that no one could see, the internal structure of the camera in Makoto Senju's hand changed rapidly, and a figure appeared on the photo displayed on the camera screen. The petite Shinigami girl squatted on the windowsill in an indecent manner under the bright moonlight, looking at something stupidly, which was both cute and beautiful. Then, Makoto Senju smiled, pressed the save button on the camera, and murmured in a low voice. Rukia, the second lesson. As a Shinigami, don't easily believe any words. I will keep this photo as a souvenir. Chapter 374. 7 years. 7 years. Counting it, this is already the 7th year that Makoto Senju has been in the human world. In terms of the time concept of the god of death, 7 years is almost a blink of an eye. However, with the appearance of Rukia Kachiki in Karakura town, it means that some world lines in the original trajectory may begin. Makoto Senju leaning against the window looked at the bright moon, but he couldn't help but frown slightly. For Makoto Senju, staying in the human world is not only to avoid being discovered by Hyoshiba Ichiba, and thus implicate Unohana teacher. More importantly, there is no doubt that Makoto Senju is trying to discover a new power in the instruments that constitute the human world to deal with Hyoshiba Ichiba. However, over the past 7 years, the ultimate spirit has been constantly fusing instruments at a certain constant speed, which allows Makoto Senju to control more and more instruments. However, this did not cause Makoto Senju to have a substantial change in power. The only thing is that Makoto Senju can achieve some incredible things for the god of death by controlling a large number of instruments. Is the amount of fused instruments still insufficient? Or is there a lack of some necessary conditions? Makoto Senju once asked the Universal Decree with this question, but the Universal Decree seemed unclear and had no way to answer. Staring at the bright moon, with his white hair draped behind him in a somewhat messy manner, Makoto Senju, who looked like a beautiful painting from a distance, was lost in deep thought. At the same time, Aizen Sasuke, who was far away in the Seireitei, was looking at Kurosaki Makoto on the screen, his eyes slightly deep and distant, until Makoto Senju seemed tired, closed the window, and disappeared from the surveillance screen. Aizen Sasuke then set his eyes on another screen that was monitoring Kachiki Rukia. But what Aizen Sasuke didn't know was that every time he looked at Makoto Senju was also watching Aizen Sasuke's every move through the same channel. Of course, Makoto Senju is not omniscient and omnipotent, and it is impossible for him to monitor every corner of the spirit particles with his consciousness at all times. Only when Aizen Sasuke is monitoring Senju Makoto will simultaneously monitor Aizen Sasuke through the corresponding spirit channel. Therefore, in the past 7 years, Aizen Sasuke's actions seem a bit strange to Senju Makoto. He silently monitors everything in Karakura town, and seems to be waiting for something, although Senju Makoto knows very well that Aizen Sasuke's purpose should still be on the unfinished version of the Hojoku that Urahara Kisuke has been secretly cultivating and researching. However, according to the information obtained by Senju Makoto, most of Urahara Kisuke's actions have always been under the surveillance of Aizen Sasuke. In other words, Aizen Sasuke simply wants to seize the unfinished version of the Hojoku in Urahara Kisuke's hands, and he can choose more simple and effective ways. After all, compared with Aizen Sasuke, Urahara Kisuke's pure combat power gap is undoubtedly huge. Aizen-kun, it seems that in addition to the Hojoku, your goal is still mostly on Kuroseki Ichigo? Create a bond for Ichigo Kuroseki, and then guide him in the direction you want. Makoto Senju, who lay back on the bed, secretly guessed. Aizen-kun, what is the position of Ichigo Kuroseki in your eyes? Hojoku? In the original trajectory, seems to be a strange thing that follows the wishes of others and gives it to the world. Will it help my situation? Aizen-kun. Why are you so sure that Urahara Kisuke will choose to hide the Shingoku in Rukia Kachiki in the future? The next day, Makoto Senju woke up as usual. Synopsis, who maintained the appearance of Remdol, was like a perfect maid, preparing toiletries and change of clothes for Makoto Senju. As for Nikamyu, who maintained the appearance of Ikage, she prepared breakfast, although in Makoto Senju's opinion, the breakfast prepared by Nikamyu is far inferior to that of Synopsis, it was undoubtedly a great improvement. Senju Makoto carefully tasted breakfast with Synopsis and Nainwa, and did not forget to encourage Nainwa. It tastes good, yin, at least it's not burnt this time. Hearing Senju Makoto's praise, Nainwa, who seemed to be expressionless as before, seemed to have a subtle wave of emotion in his eyes, and then answered in a serious manner. In terms of the best option, I think the manager should let Rem prepare breakfast instead of me, who is not good at cooking. Senju Makoto said gently. Only tools will always be used in the most suitable place for themselves, but as for companions, they should make up for their weaknesses. Naeum's expression seemed to have no fluctuations, and he lowered his head slightly and answered. Since it is the manager's order, I will continue to prepare breakfast. Come on, Senju Makoto said, and then he confidently handed the flower shop to Naeum and Synopsis to take care of it, picked up a book and a pot of flower arrangement in his hand, put on a simple white windbreaker and headed towards the direction of Karakura First High School. Having lived in Karakura for 7 years, Senju Makoto is undoubtedly quite familiar with the city. And because of his gentle and humble character, Senju Makoto is quite popular in the surrounding streets. Along the way, in addition to some elderly people going out for a walk, many anxious commuters would stop and say hello to Senju Makoto when they saw him. Mr. Kuroseki looks very energetic today, thank you. Grandma Ota is also in good condition. Manager Kuroseki, I need 99 roses tomorrow. Can you not tell Miss Rem to prepare them in advance? No problem, I will prepare them for you. Come on. Even if you fail to confess 99 times, I believe you will be able to move Rem sooner or later. Kuroseki brother, I heard that there seemed to be an explosion over there in Matsushita Street and it has been closed. Okay, thank you for telling me. Along the way, Makoto Senju handled various interpersonal interactions almost like a spring breeze, and his footsteps were still walking slowly, forming a sharp contrast with some of the elites or ordinary office workers who passed by from time to time. In comparison, Makoto Senju was like a leisurely strolling bard, however, there was nothing he could do about it. As a god of death with a long life, especially after Makoto Senju mastered the name of spiritual child, his lifespan was almost as endless as that of Hyoshogu Ichibei. Makoto Senju gradually had a vague feeling about the concept of time. However, compared to Hyoshogu Ichibei's habit of looking down on everything from a high position in the Soul King Palace, Senju Makoto undoubtedly enjoyed this peaceful and leisurely feeling more. Chapter 375. Teacher Kuroseki. The only thing that made Makoto Senju a little regretful was that teacher Unohana was not around, although through the channels of the Shifen Yuan family, Makoto Senju has been regularly communicating with Unohana Retsu, but in the end, Makoto Senju missed Unohana Retsu very much. However, with the company of the Rem doll and the Shadow doll, Makoto Senju did not feel lonely. Soon, Makoto Senju walked to the gate of Kurakura Daiichi High School. A large number of boys and girls full of youth and passion were walking into the school gate from all directions in school uniforms. The next moment, just as Makoto Senju stopped for a while, he suddenly felt something soft hit him hard from behind. Bang! It hurt. A cute and lovely voice sounded behind Makoto Senju. Senju Makoto turned his head and saw a girl with long orange-red hair, a pair of light blue flower-shaped hairpins on both sides, a beautiful face, and a shocking holy text that was extremely asymmetrical, with her age sitting on the ground with a slightly uncomfortable expression. In addition, next to this girl, there was a bento that seemed to be quite strangely matched and fell to the ground. Soon, when the girl noticed that her bento had completely fallen to the ground, she seemed to ignore the pain and instinctively let out a whine from her heart. "Woo bento, my bento." Senju Makoto saw this, and a little helplessness appeared on his face, and he said, "Inoue classmate, nothing is broken, right?" Inoue raised her head, as if she was sad for the death of the bento, and looked at Senju Makoto with tears in her eyes, and said with a little sob, "Teacher Kurosaki, I'm fine, but the bento is broken." Senju Makoto said gently to comfort her, "It's okay. My clerk will give you a portion of the lunchbox when he brings it to me this afternoon." Inoue lowered her head a little embarrassedly and said, But if this is the case, it will definitely bother Mr. Kurosaki, right?" "It's okay. Take good care of students. This is what my teacher taught me back then." At this moment, Senju Makoto's smile was gentle and brilliant. Not to mention in a time, even many students passing by couldn't help but look stupid. Too handsome. Mr. Kurosaki, the absolute handsome man of Kurakura High School, no, the most handsome man in Kurakura town. Damn it, why didn't Mr. Kurosaki assign the flower arrangement course in my class? I really want Mr. Kurosaki to teach me how to arrange flowers well. What a pity. I can take Mr. Kurosaki's flower arrangement course this afternoon. For a while, although many students around were talking in an unusually low voice, their words were undoubtedly clearly heard by Senju Makoto. Then, in order to avoid any disturbance, Senju Makoto helped Inoue up and said, "The class is about to start, go in first, Inoue-san." "Yes, Mr. Kurosaki." Inoue responded subconsciously, and when she was about to turn around and run towards the school, Senju Makoto called Inoue and said, "Inoue-san, this is the 9th time you have bumped into me and fallen this month. You must be more careful when you walk next time." In an instant, Inoue's face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. She wanted to bury her head completely like an ostrich in the magnificent holy words on her chest, and then ran into the school. Looking at the swaying curves of Inoue that seemed to be visible from behind when she was running, Senju Makoto couldn't help but shake his head helplessly, and followed her into the school. If Senju Makoto didn't know very well that Inoue was an extremely simple and kind girl, he couldn't help but wonder if Inoue wanted to touch him. For Inoue, it was as if Senju Makoto had some kind of attraction, so that Inoue would inexplicably bump into Senju Makoto 10 times a month and then fall to the ground. Could it be the burden caused by the large size of the holy word? That's not right. Inoue's athletic ability is obviously quite good. She doesn't usually bump into others and fall down. After putting on the queency vest, she has developed some inexplicable attraction to the holy word. Senju Makoto felt that all these speculations were quite nonsense, but he couldn't understand why Inoue would always inexplicably launch a human bomb attack on him. Soon, Senju Makoto arrived at the office assigned to him by Kurakura First High School, and then placed the books and flower arrangements in his hands on the desk. As a famous flower arrangement artist in Kurakura town, Kurakura First High School sincerely invited Senju Makoto to teach about 4 years ago. Considering that the affairs of the flower shop can be handled by Synopsis and Neon Mew, and they are usually a bit too leisurely, Makoto Senju accepted the invitation of Kurakura First High School after a little consideration. However, considering Makoto Senju's reputation, Kurakura First High School has almost no rigid teaching requirements for Makoto Senju, and chooses classes for teaching based on Makoto Senju's wishes. Then, Makoto Senju picked up the class schedule on the desk and took a simple look, confirming the class for today's teaching, and then sat down and brewed a pot of tea slowly. Until a bell rang, Makoto Senju picked up the book and flower arrangement works again and walked out of the office. Coincidentally, the first class today is Inoue's class. In addition, there are some faces in the class that are quite special to Makoto Senju. Ichigo Kurosaki, Yasuta Chidori, Ryuki Arisawa, etc. The appearance of Makoto Senju also made the whole class faintly excited. After all, Makoto Senju is a well-known flower arrangement celebrity not only in Karakura First High School, but also in the entire Karakura town. Only Ichigo Kurosaki, who was sitting in the corner of the class and had brilliant orange hair, noticed Senju Makoto's gaze and turned his head to look out the window awkwardly. Senju Makoto didn't care about this. He placed the flower arrangement in the middle of the podium and said in a gentle tone, "Morning, students. Good morning, Mr. Kurosaki. Today's class is relatively simple. This flower arrangement was completed by me last night." After a pause, Senju Makoto continued. "Students can freely interpret the artistic conception and meaning contained in it, and if you were allowed to further improve it yourself, you can choose which flowers to add, and just write down the corresponding content and hand it in." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.